All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 30 of Mets Weekly, our last impressions because the regular season is officially over. I mean, the regular season felt over for a while, but it is officially over. There are no more Mets baseball games, which is kind of a good thing and kind of a bad thing. There are some playoff teams that are playing right now, so we could watch these other teams and learn from them to see what the Mets could implement into their organization. So I am joined by my great host, and it's not just a solo shot of me, but we have almost the full Mets Weekly crew in here. So let us start. We'll go around the horn. Let's go to Mets fan. Tell us about your channel and any future content coming up.
Let's see. I'm Mets fan. I'm a baseball content guy, graphic designer, and I'm extremely tired right now. But that doesn't stop me from talking about the baseball team that constantly reminds me that the universe does not like me, the New York Mets. Yeah, I'm probably still recovering from that little Mets stream. We made it to 51K. My internet went out. I planned to resume it the next day, and then I woke up to my body telling me and holding me at gunpoint saying, "This is not happening. Go back to sleep, you analytical nerd." I think it was probably Andrew's voice or something. But yeah, lesson learned. The internet always wins. Lol Mets. Let's go Mets.
All right, then we have the aforementioned All Elite Rhino, regular Rhino. Goes by a lot of different names, but tell us what you got going on, Rhino.
What's going on, guys? Back again. I actually uploaded a video this week. It's been a minute since I've actually uploaded a sit-down video. MLB playoff predictions. NLC National League side's already busted, but future content, I will hopefully get out my Mets offseason prediction. Sorry if there's an echo. I am in a hotel room, so if there's an echo, it's on my bed. I'm sorry, but hopefully trying to get out the dream offseason or what I would do GM kind of armchair stuff coming out hopefully next week.
Very good. And Tony Metro. You are muted, Tony Metro.
What's up, guys? I'm Tony Metro. Just like everybody else, I make videos about baseball. Right now, I'm just doing predictions and coverage for Major League Baseball postseason. You guys can go to my channel. I actually have a tab dedicated MLB 2021 playoffs. So go check that out, and you'll see all the videos. And next one coming up, it will be Division Series predictions.
All right, very good. I like that. And Mets Talk with Hayden, or Rays Talk with Hayden, or Royals Talk with Hayden, or Mets Rage with Hayden, or Steve Cohen Talk with Hayden. What do you got cooking?
Yeah, what's going on, everyone? It is Mets Talk with Hayden. We know the live stream today got spammed with Royals Talk with Hayden. Apparently, we were talking about Bobby Witt Jr., and apparently I'm a Royals fan now, so I know Andrew liked that as the prospect guy. But yeah, what's going on, everyone? Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. Raging is the game. I hope we are all doing extremely well. Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. Live streams, videos. Kind of like Tony, I'm going to be recapping all the postseason games and series, all that great stuff. Mets news, updates, all that great stuff. I want to thank Frank for hosting this week. LFGM, and we got a good offseason ahead.
Yeah, so let's talk about that offseason. The first topic of business we have is the manager situation. Luis Rojas is out as manager, something I personally was hoping for because he did not do a swell job, in my opinion. But now that we know Rojas is officially out, we don't have to think about, is he actually gone? Because we saw some reports that CNA Alderson kind of wanted to keep him, but as soon as the regular season was over, the very next day he was gone. So all those reports were false. So Tony Metro, what was your reaction and just how are you feeling right now that Luis Rojas is out as New York Mets manager?
Yeah, it was time for him to go, no doubt. The 60-game truncated season wasn't really a fair shake for him. So I think most Mets fans were willing to at least see what he could do in a full season. So we got to see it, and the results were not impressive. The team was looked underprepared. They obviously underachieved. They looked lifeless at times, and we obviously know the very questionable decision-making on the field that Rojas made. And I think the most damning thing is the report that just came out. I believe it was yesterday. I don't know who to credit it to, but there were a bunch of players that said that they did not feel like they had anyone in the dugout or in the clubhouse that held them accountable, that got them going when, they weren't able to. And that has to fall squarely on the manager's shoulders, and that would be Luis Rojas. So happy to see him go. Not sure who's going to be the next manager. Pretty much too early to tell at this point, but this is the first step in what I hope will be a very successful offseason.
Let's talk with Hayden. What did you think? Your boy Steve Cohen showing off his power, showing what a good owner does as he gets rid of, what he doesn't like. So how are you feeling about Rojas being gone?
Yeah, I think it was honestly the best thing to have. Like everyone pretty much here would say, it's not surprising. It makes sense you fire him pretty much 24 hours since the season's over. As soon as the World Series is over, that's when pretty much the offseason starts. So you want to get everything wrapped up till then. You get everything set. And pretty much you have your offseason start then. So it makes sense. You want to get the process moving. The Mets front office is going to be very, very busy these next couple weeks. In terms of Rojas, I think we all pretty much could agree why. We all know the history behind him. We know his reasonings, whether he couldn't manage a bullpen. He didn't know the exact order to put his bullpen staff in. Really, and towards the end of the season, he was very poorly cognizant that the season's wrapping over, and we're giving Aaron Loop and Javier Baez days off because there's 3 weeks left in the season, and mathematically you're still in it. But according to Rojas, we need to rest because some miracle is going to come where a lot of our bench guys are going to continue for us to make the playoffs again. So it makes the best sense. Rojas as a person seemed great. The players loved him, but it just seems he wasn't a manager to win for the Mets. Pretty much like everyone said, I think he could be a manager to win ahead. It's just the Mets, they want to win now and not 3 years, 5 years from now. So, I wish Rojas the best of luck. If he chooses to stay with the Mets, that's his choice. I don't really think that's going to happen. That'd be kind of awkward. You get a higher position, you get demoted. I don't know. I just feel you'd have some animosity there, in my opinion. But, honestly, I think it's the best move ever.
And what about you, Andrew? Is this the best move ever? I mean, how are you feeling after Rojas is gone?
I mean, I was so upset, man. I love Luis Rojas. It sucked. He had to go, but, it's a good dude. It sucks to suck. Obviously, we all wanted it. The writing was on the wall. We all just knew it. It was just a matter of time. I mean, it got me $20. I said he'd be gone by 3 o'clock. He was gone by 2:57. Want to bet? Nothing better than that. Again, clean house. Again, he was a kind of a Wilpon guy. He's hanging around in the minor leagues, seeing people being like, oh, he's going to be a good manager somewhere else. I'll make that bet that he won't get another managerial job. Maybe a coaching job, but not a managerial job. Again, it's what has to happen to hopefully get this team to go that next level, and hopefully they don't mess up the next managerial choice and just finally get the guy and leave him, and we don't got to worry about the managerial position for a while.
Yeah, Rojas is a weird situation because as we go to you, Mets fan, we heard so much about, this is a guy that originally was not supposed to be the manager. He took over after the whole Carlos Beltran situation, had to do a 60-game season, change in ownership, change in front office, all the injuries, plus everything else going on. He handled all that well from a media standpoint, from a PR standpoint. I don't think we'll have any scandals, fingers crossed, regarding Luis Rojas. But as far as a manager, he did have to go. And Mets fan, what do you think about just the way he came in and the way he goes out?
Well, I am just so shocked that this happened. I mean, so surprising. I now on our opening day stream, episode 11, 13, whatever it was, we talked about how the Mets season could end. And I decided to go with a different angle, and I said Luis Rojas. So my brain is smarter than everyone in the world combined. That was the voice in my head. I apologize. Okay. Now, he wasn't the only reason this team failed this year, but the mentality that he displayed, the moves that he made, it made this team so vulnerable, so predictable, just to get their asses kicked almost every single night. But I also want to quote another past quote of mine. I did a video about a year and a half ago where I basically took a shit on every team's offseason. And during the Mets segment, I mentioned that Rojas was the right hire for the Mets manager instead of Mickey Callaway in 2018. Now, when you think about it, yeah. Now, Rojas was a quality control coach and a manager, and a lot of these guys he managed in the minor league system. Now, he would have been a perfect fit for a lot of these young careers that we had on the 2018 Mets. Now, I know this team sucked, but you can try to remember Dominic Smith, Ahmed Rosario, Brandon Nimmo. He was in his third year, but he didn't play that much. He got hurt. Jeff McNeil, and of course, Alonso the following year. So Rojas would have been perfect for this wave of developing players, but it didn't happen. Instead, he was an emergency move from the Beltran saga. And he found himself managing a team that was supposed to be a big playoff contender with new ownership coming in the next year. And the first-year manager stuff here doesn't really apply in 2020 and 2021 because he's not a major league manager. And we needed a major league manager this year to compete. How I see it is you traded for Francisco Lindor. You gave him a huge extension to be a franchise cornerstone for the next decade. And you should be in playoff contention, and you should be in win now mode. Rojas is not a win now manager at this point. I mean, I don't know if he'll eventually be, but right now he's not a win now manager, and 77 wins is expected when you aren't one, but unacceptable for this team's ceiling. And that's exactly why it just did not work out. Hopefully he, figures something out afterwards, because managing the Mets right now is not his thing.
Yeah, and what I didn't like about him was his unwillingness to change. I would say where you would see Luis Rojas make a mistake, whether it was something he did not intentionally walking a batter or going to a lefty bat because you have a right-handed pitcher on the mound, even though it's not necessarily a better offensive player, and it wouldn't work out. And then the very next time he was in that scenario, he would do the same thing and it wouldn't work out again. So he didn't think like, oh, last time I did this, it didn't work out. Maybe I should try something different. No, he tried the same thing. Never tried to send guys, never tried to – he just constantly did the same things over and over and never got different results. So that's what frustrated me the most. I think in all sports, all great coaches make adjustments. They don't do the same thing every single day, the whole game. So that's what frustrated me the most. And just this whole year has been a huge frustration. So as we go on with that frustration, how much should Sandy Alderson be held accountable for his season, and what should his role be next season? Mets Talk with Hayden.
Yeah, pretty unfortunate season for Sandy Alderson. I guess pretty much dating back to the trade deadline, we know that's when I guess his name really started to become relevant again. We know Sandy. We've all stated it a million times in the channel. Sandy is slow during the trade deadline. And obviously this trade deadline, he's pretty much just flat out said that everything, all full credit went on Zach Scott. And he really didn't have any take in that. You really could question how much authority, Sandy Alderson even had with this Mets team. Listen, I'm kind of getting tired of hearing but he's been doing this for decades. All the other MLB executives and owners love him. And then people say, he got us in 2015. Yeah, but 2015 was a completely different team. The Mets had a different agenda then. They had different ownership. They had different guys. Analytics have grown quite a bit since then. You have a team where it's completely different than that. So overall right now, I think Sandy Alderson, obviously, he has another year in his contract as the president of baseball operations. Theo Epstein is likely out of that chance, and as well as Billy B. So it is likely he is still going to be the president of baseball operations. In the scenario he takes some step back, I could still see him being involved, whether it's some type of analytical thing in the department. But as of right now, I think he's still the president of operations.
What about you, Andrew? How much accountability should Sandy Alderson have for, the unfortunate season that the Mets had? Because in the offseason, we thought, okay, with all the things that the Mets did, all the players they got, this should be a team that should not have 77 wins. This should be a team that's at least above 500, at least really in the wild card race, and shouldn't just completely die by the time the year is over.
Yeah, when you sign James McCann, that's kind of a bad sign when that's one of your big acquisitions. Like I said, like Hayden said, like we all kind of think, Sandy said Zach Scott was the trade deadline, so I'm not going to talk about the trade deadline. He said that was a Zach Scott thing. That wasn't me. So I'm not talking, even though Baez and Williams were both great acquisitions, that wasn't Sandy. How much accountability for the season? I mean, you could say a little bit, you could say decent amount, but again, if this was a Zach Scott year, you could say some of the offseason stuff, they got maybe trading, obviously, James McCann, some of the bullpen signing Trevor May, but who knows if that was Jared Porter or that was Sandy involved. Who knows? But again, I think Sandy obviously is going to take the blame because obviously the GM's position just changes every 6 months with some kind of scandal. So, and he usually needs to take more of the reign of power. And now he is the player operation, whatever, the baseball ops are. And what will his role be next year? I'm hoping they obviously goes down, they find a guy in that main spot, and then just goes into pure scouting. Just let him be the scout and, let him talent either college, high school arms, and let him do that. Because right now, again, we need to go younger, and his time, I think we all know, is over.
What about you, Tony? I mean, we've seen Sandy for a long time now, whether it was with the Wilpons or with Steve Cohen. So how are you feeling about him, and what should his role be?
You know what? I think that Sandy Alderson kind of was given instruction by Steve Cohen, whether people want to believe this or not, to be a little bit more measured in this first year. Acquiring Francisco Lindor, signing him to a 10-year contract was the beginning of a building block along with the core that we already have. But I think this year was an evaluation year on the current roster, which obviously showed that there are a ton of other issues. So I really do believe that is why that the Mets didn't go all in at the trade deadline. They're trying to rebuild this farm system. That didn't go so well considering how the draft went. But that, I believe, was the original blueprint. And so I think that Sandy's getting a lot of flack. I don't blame him at all for the hirings of Porter and Zach Scott. You can't, ever know what people are going to do or have done in their personal lives. But overall, I think Sandy Alderson should be still within the organization, but obviously in a much lesser role, just kind of like a baseball business perspective kind of thing. He brings a level of respect with other general managers and presidents of baseball operations or whatnot. So I would like him to be in that role. Hopefully they will bring in a really talented GM and potentially even a president of baseball operations, and let Sandy just kind of do the stuff on the side, be someone that can facilitate conversations with other teams, and hopefully he doesn't have his fingerprints too much on next season's roster.
And lastly, Mets fan, you've been an advocate for Sandy Alderson all year. He's someone that you really have supported, the way he approaches Major League Baseball, whether it's waiver claims or the draft or, just scouting, things like that. But after seeing how the season went, how are your feelings with Sandy Alderson at this very moment?
I mean, every time when I do see blame on Sandy, and this goes all the way back to when he was in the Wilpon era, I always ask, does he ever get a fair chance? And the answer 90% of the time is no. Let's recap the timeline here. Alderson was brought in by the MLB to help the previous ownership get situated after the Madoff scandal. You fast forward to 2015, Alderson builds a team that went to a World Series. He also drafted a lot of the key players on this roster. The team fades in 2017 to 2018. Lots of injuries, lots of crap going on. And our previous ownership basically throws Sandy Alderson under the bus for the team losing. Meanwhile, the guy is battling cancer and needed to step away. Then in late 2020, you fast forward after the whole Brody era, Cohen buys the team, brings back Alderson to oversee baseball operations. Then this year, the people who were supposed to do his old job, the GM was a creep. The acting GM was a drunk. So there you go, Sandy. You're the president, the vice president, the general manager. You're the assistant general manager. Oh, and the players are declaring war on the fans by booing them. So listen, I'm not trying to say he's perfect, and he made plenty of mistakes. He has plenty of weaknesses, which we'll get into, obviously. But the amount of shit that this guy has had to deal with, I'm surprised he has not dropped dead yet. I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, think about it. Does this guy ever get a fair chance to do his job correctly? It's insane. I mean, and for his role, I mean, I've expressed that I think it is time to move on from Sandy as a executive because of his strengths and weaknesses. Now, obviously, he's a big money ball guy. He uses that analytical preset to run that majority of the team and basically form his roster and organization together. He's a sniper on the waiver claims. He's great on the trade market. But an analytical approach is a piece to a big market team that the Mets are trying to be under this new regime. So it's like I said before, I'd love to have him as the head of the analytics department or the scouting, but that's kind of unrealistic at this point. We'll see. He's kind of on his way out. But at the end of the day, the game has passed him by as an executive, and especially in a big market organization. So I'm not too pissed that he's coming back next year, and I pretty much saw this coming no matter what. So fingers crossed that he can have a normal year, but we all know how this franchise works. So
I'd just like to add on to all that, and it kind of piggybacks off what I was saying. I do believe that the Mets were trying to be a little careful, a little more economic with how they spent on players as well as with their prospects. But the one issue I do have with Sandy is that even during his time in the first tenure with the Mets and now this year, it seems like the Mets are never able to get their first choice. It seemed like they even though Cespedes was obviously the better player at the trade deadline, he wanted Carlos Gomez first, which would have been a much worse trade. Didn't happen. He wanted this year George Springer. They didn't get George Springer. They were reportedly interested in Real Muto. We settled for James McCann. And it seems to happen every year when Sandy Alderson's ahead of a team. We get these reports that they're very interested in XYZ top free agents, and we always end up with the second-tier free agents. And I don't know if that's maybe because Sandy just won't budge from a certain number or a certain player in a trade, but that's my biggest issue. And so I'm hoping that he's not going to be an integral part of any type of discussions with free agents or in trades this offseason.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there is something to be said for overpaying for a player if he is your number one option. It's like if you know that J.T. Realmuto or Springer or, let's say even if it was Carlos Gomez, if he was really good at the time still, whatever that player is, if you're like, I know that a player in this caliber is usually worth, 25 to 30 million, 20 million, whatever it is, but the way he would affect my particular team, the kind of role he would have on my particular team, he's worth more than that to me. So I'm going to overpay what these other teams are paying because I really need this player. Sandy Alderson doesn't do that. So I think because of that, that is why the Mets end up with the lesser guy. They're like, oh, well, you know what? We can't get Realmuto, but if we get McCann, maybe we could get Springer. And it's like, oh, well, I can't get Springer because now I need to keep my Conforto. So it's like there's always some kind of stipulation as to why they can't go all in and get the top tier guys, and that's why I believe it's Boris that always says, oh, they don't shop in the meat section, they're always in the, whatever stupid. He has the worst analogies, but that was always a big thing, the gourmet section. That's what he said. The Mets don't shop in the gourmet section and things like that. So that's just the way Sandy also approached it. I think it does harpen back to the money ball. It does go with the, you try to find the best available player at the best available price. You try to get the bargain deal pretty much. And Sandy Alderson did do a good job with that. You look at Aaron Luke, that's a money ball signing where like you get this guy for a few million and it turns out to have one of the greatest reliever seasons you'll ever see in Mets history. Or even a guy like Jonathan VR, he got him for $3 million and he performed, but he ended up being a starter for you by the end of the year, which was nothing any of us predicted. So in that regard, Sandy Alderson could do a really good job. When it comes to the top tier guys, he has a price and he won't budge on it. And that's just the approach. And that's what concerns me as we go into the next phase is like, okay, well, now that we don't think Sandy Alderson is going to be president of baseball ops, he would like to get somebody else. We know that Theo Epstein is not coming. Him and Steve Cohen had a conversation. No, so forget Theo Epstein. The next guy that a lot of people talk about is Billy Beane. And before we talk about him, the guy that taught Billy Beane is Sandy Alderson. And the guy that Brad Pitt did a whole movie about is Billy Beane. And he is the true money ball guy. So I do want to start with you, Hayden, because you kept saying, Uncle Theo will come to the rescue. Well, it looks like Uncle Theo will not be here, but can I interest you in an Uncle Billy, or do you have another uncle in mind that could help this team out?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, Theo Epstein was not able to come to the Mets. I'm not really sure what exactly went down. I'm not sure if it was Cohen that had a disagreement with him or if it was Theo Epstein. Listen, we know Theo Epstein is in his mid-40s. He's in a higher role in MLB right now. I think he's working with Rob Manfred and some executive office with the analytical department. So, I mean, obviously, it'd probably be a downgrade to come to New York as a president of operations or a GM in this case scenario when he has such a high role in MLB. That's kind of common. You don't have to get involved in the crazy New York stuff. So I don't know if that's the case. We'll probably find out in a couple weeks to months why he actually didn't want to come. Billy Beane is a guy that is available. Veteran guy, as you stated, analytics, very analytically driven. This last year's team claimed to be analytically driven, yet they couldn't even use basic on-base percentage and batting average. So hopefully that could be really something to change. Personally, I think Billy Beane could be a great guy for the Mets to come ahead, but the likelihood is uncertain.
All right, so Andrew, as an armchair GM, you know it's not going to be Theo Epstein. Billy Beane is unlikely, but still possible. So, I mean, what are some names that you are looking at, some guys that you are monitoring to be this president of baseball operations?
Yeah, I think I've fallen in love with my guy, Josh Burns from the Dodgers. And again, I think the name was thrown. I think Michael Mayer's tweet, he has him on there. Most of us don't know anything. I did some research, but he was a part of the 2004 Red Sox as the assistant GM. Goes to Arizona in 2005. Is a big scouting of Max Scherzer, Paul Goldschmidt, Adam Eaton, A.J. Pollock. Some pretty good names in Arizona. He also hired A.J. Hinch. I think he's a pretty good manager in Major League Baseball. Then he goes to San Diego in 2011 to 2014. Here are his first-round picks. 2011, Joe Ross. Seems to be a pain in the ass when he faces the Mets. 2012, he had two. Both guys who also are a pain in the ass for the Mets. Zach Eflin and Max Fried. Two more good pitchers. 2013, Hunter Renfroe. Has blossomed late in his career with Boston. And, he drafted the best shortstop in baseball, Trey Turner. So those are just first-round picks. I excluded second and, international signings. Then he goes to the Dodgers in 2014. Since 2015, the Dodgers have had a top 10 or better farm system. What do we want? First-round picks including Walker Buehler, Gavin Lux, and Will Smith in the same draft. And JT Ginn. I think the Mets have some connections to him. So just a guy to think about. Obviously, he's developed Rookie of the Year candidates like Bellinger and Seager and Buehler and Gonsolin. And always develop prospects. If you're telling me a guy you want to make it the East Coast Dodgers, why not get a guy who you put him in the topic? He's never been the top executive. He's been always an assistant to the baseball ops. You're telling me a guy who can make this farm system, it's top heavy, maybe in second and first round, continuously hit on first round picks, deep and 2 first round picks next year, deep in the farm and hit in later rounds. Scouting, international, for me, Josh Burns is the easiest pick. I know Mets fans probably going to go with the other guy on my list, so I'll let Mets fan go there. So if it's me, I'm going Josh Burns.
And do you know what Josh Burns' contract situation is right now? How many years he's got left on the deal?
I think he has a year left, but this is a promotion, so you can talk to him because it's a promotion from assistant to, master. Master. Head baseball ops. Oh, I said master. Head baseball ops.
Yeah, as long as the Dodgers grant permission, I mean, he would be a really nice name to add because that was the problem the Mets had last year when they were doing this whole search is that they would look for a guy and they say, oh, no, denied access. The other organizations wouldn't let the Mets talk to that executive. So hopefully that is not the case with Burns. He definitely would be a nice addition. So, Tony, what is your take on Theo Epstein is out, Billy Beane likely out. So where do the Mets turn to next to get this position filled so that Sandy Alderson can take that back seat that we all want him to take? And I'm sure that Sandy Alderson would love to be like, this is too much for me. I'm getting too old for this crap. I just want to be off to the side and have to do all this damn work.
Yeah, I was disappointed that Theo Epstein obviously wasn't interested, that it ended so quickly. Billy Beane, I do still believe is a possibility, but I'm not holding my breath on it. I don't really think about anybody else. Obviously, the guys that have already been mentioned, David Stearns from Milwaukee and et cetera, et cetera. But how about this? I'll throw out one. Jeff Luhnow. Let's get Jeff Luhnow in the house. And I can't take credit for this one. It was brought up by WFAN. But I mean, why not? Everyone else from that Astro scandal is involved in baseball again, with the exception of Carlos Beltran. So why not bring in Jeff Luhnow, who built that Astros team that is still running on all cylinders as we speak right now? They're leading the Red Sox, I believe, in the AL, or the White Sox in the ALDS. So, hey, you know what? Steve Cohen, you want to really create some waves that reverberate throughout the entire league? Who cares what the other owners think? Bring in Jeff Luhnow. Get him out of retirement. He obviously knows how to build a team. He did it for the Astros. Let's do it. And my second choice, how about Brian Cashman? We know there's a lot of turmoil right now in Yankees land. I don't care about the Yankees recycled thing. This guy always is aggressive. You didn't think he was going to do anything at this year's deadline. He gets Rizzo and Gallo, despite how poorly Gallo played, and he improved their team at the deadline, and I think it propelled them into the playoffs. So if Cashman became available, that'd be my 1A and 1B if nobody else could be available.
Yeah, no, those are interesting names because you do want to add from those good organizations like Houston, even the Yankees or Milwaukee, the Dodgers. Hey, and you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to share something. So did you guys see what Wayne Randazzo said about David Stearns and Francisco Alvarez?
I did, and it's just absolutely
yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm assuming all five of us are going to have a nay on that. So
yeah, he's better than Gary Cohen, though, right?
There's no player I would give Alvarez up for, so you better believe there's no executive I would give Alvarez up for. So, Mets fan, you're last on the list. So, where are you looking at for executives? Because Andrew said you have another name. Well, what is that other name?
Yeah, I mean, I do have another name, but I'm not really like full on focusing on this today, but I would say I do want to do I do want to do Burns. I do like Burns. He seems like that big market Sandy where he can go from all aspects, and he's not very limited with what he does with his strengths and weaknesses. But I do want to talk about Theo Epstein and Billy Beane because this has just gone on way too far. I will put this as nicely as I possibly can because I respect the hell out of both of these guys for what they have done for the organizations they've worked for. But I can't give much of a shit that they're not interested in coming here. And I'm going to hop on my PlayStation gaming background for a second. I like to compare the Mets front office moves sometimes to the developers of NBA 2K. Okay. It's always one step forward and then two steps back. You solve the problem by making a change, and then the next move you make puts you right back to where you started. So let's start with Billy Beane. Okay. I'll let the chat catch up, and I think we've already answered this question in this stream. But who mentored Billy Beane in Oakland? Anyone want to answer before the chat catches up? Anyone?
I mean, I said it earlier, so I hope they were listening.
Okay. The name is Sandy Alderson. Good job, everybody, for the chat delay. Okay. And according to 90% of Mets fans that I see, I mean, everywhere, Sandy is Satan. So if you're not going to like Billy Beane, you're not going to if you don't like Sandy Alderson, you're not going to like Billy Beane. And the people that he's going to bring in are going to be Moneyball guys. You can guarantee that. So you're back where you started again. Now, I'm not slandering Moneyball. It's just, it's just not a primary source in a big market. Now, Theo Epstein, the man with the rings. The man who can shatter a franchise curse. The man who is the all-time great messiah. And the guy who recommended Jared Porter and Zach Scott to Steve Cohen. 2 steps back. Okay? The crazy thing is that there's a lot of reports of Epstein knowing about Scott's history with the law. Apparently he has a few things there. So maybe that's not a good idea.
Scott or Porter?
Scott. Did I say Porter? Whoops.
No, you said Scott. I thought it would have been
all
Porter.
right. So then,
Porter
and then you go
like
over to, and
went
then
on for a while.
And then Jared from Subway Porter over here. He's a creep, right? And that stuff happened in 2016 under Theo Epstein. So if Sandy goes down for his stupid hires, Epstein goes down too. Here's what I want in an executive. Someone who has no recent connection to the New York Mets, okay? Hire someone who's never seen a baseball game before. I don't care. I don't need them related to the New York Mets. But maybe a stapler, I don't know, that hasn't been to Queens yet on delivery. I mean, these fantasies just never work out for us. I'm so sick of the delusion that one person can make us the greatest organization of all time. It's enough already. It's just get somebody that's that has never talked to the New York Mets before. I know the Mets are in the media eye all the time, but find somebody that isn't. Burns, Michael Hill, somebody who has no relation to the New York Mets whatsoever.
I totally agree. That's a great point you bring up. It's just like how often the Mets use just recycled guys. I mean, guys we've seen already. And that's why I'm out on Beltran. It's like, I know he obviously didn't get a chance to manage, but it's just like, I want everything brand new. I want a complete fresh slate because you know what? Steve Cohen's first year, we're like, oh, it's the Wilpons. It's all the Wilpons' fault. We get a new owner and the team was still really bad. So it's like you still have to just add a lot of new stuff in order to produce change. You look at what happens with the Yankees every year. They have the same guy in the front office, same manager, same team, and they have the same results every single year. So I think that the Mets do need a brand new change. And just like you said, someone that maybe not all of us have heard of, whether it's for the president job or for the manager job, but guys that they check all the boxes. They know what they're doing, and they will give us a brand new team that should give us brand new results because that's what we need. We need to do everything different than what we've been doing because all the Mets have done is lose, and I really would like to stop losing. So let's get out of the front office. Let's get away from the managers, and let's go to the players. As the big money guy from this offseason, even though the contract hasn't said in quite yet, the takeaways from Francisco Lindor's first season as a New York Met, Andrew Rhino Acevedo. What were your takeaways from Lindor's first year as a New York Met?
I don't know what that was. He sucked. He had a bad batting average. So, pretty much. Can you guys hear me or no? Yes or no? We good? Okay. Pretty much. Again, it's kind of a tale of two halves with Francisco. Again, first couple months struggled, but then ever since the break and before he got hurt, and then after he got hurt, he played pretty well. Again, this first half splits. 225 batting average. We want that high batting average, and he's only hitting 225, and that kind of sucks. It did improve a little bit in the second half to 240, 241, so that's a 20-point gap. I mean, it's not great. I expect even though he's only making $20 million this year, I like a little bit higher of a batting average. Obviously, the elite defense, base running, all the other tools are great. Some power. Again, he still hit 20 homers, which is cool. RBI-wise. Again, he's hitting in the 2 spot. He would like more RBIs. He did pretty well with runners in scoring position. Okay, that's just okay. I'm not even going to finish that. But again, it's his first year. Beltran's for everybody's first year sucks with the Mets, and I know that's the excuse. Obviously, we hope next year we get back to seeing the Lindor hitting 30 doubles, 30 homers, the 270 batting average, with a respectable good batting average. But again, it's Lindor. He got better, and obviously if Baez is here next year, he gets to play with his friend for a full season, hopefully. That gets him going because since he started playing with Baez, he started playing better, more looking like the guy from Cleveland. So hopefully the tail end of this season goes into next year, and we get to see more of that Francisco Lindor when the contract kicks in.
All right, Hayden, what were your takeaways from Lindor's first season besides DFAing him?
Yeah. So Lindor had a very interesting season, obviously. I mean, people were expecting this guy to be in MVP talks, and pretty much besides the injuries, he really wasn't much of an MVP. I could really care less if he was in the 99th percentile and outs above average. If I wanted a elite defender, plenty of other options out there. Lindor, obviously, I think was, Lindor claimed that he was partially a reason why the Mets didn't succeed necessarily this season, and I think he has a fair point there. Pretty much, obviously, we could see his stats, slash line 322, 412, 734, and having an OPS plus of 101. That's pretty much 1 point higher than the average. overall Lindor's season was, kind of rough. He kind of went through little small sample sizes. He had maybe one series where he struck out, one series where he hit the ball well, the launch angle, the exit velocity, it was there, but Charlie Blackmon was there and he was lucky enough to catch it. I'm tired of hearing like that. It's baseball's a result-oriented game. We heard that a million times already, and I want to start seeing results. I'm hoping Lindor can and will burst out next season. I mean, September, him and Baez both really exploded. Luckily he's not striking out. He's hitting the ball. So, I mean, that's the first step of the problem. Overall, I think we're just going to have to hold on to Lindor. We're stuck with him. It sucks, but you know what? So many other guys came into this situation. Piazza, Beltran, they sucked their first year. And then for the remainder of their contract, they played pretty well to an extent. So you hope Lindor, second year of the contract. There's people out there that say, oh, maybe Lindor just can't handle, a huge market team. And that may be true, but, we won't find out till 2-3 years from now, till there's actually a certain amount of time that we can judge him on.
And Tony Metro, what was your takeaways from Lindor's first full season as a member of the New York Mets? We saw some good, we saw some bad, and we saw a lot of in between. So what do you think?
Yeah, in summation, it was disappointing. Obviously, didn't live up to the expectations that I think all of us had when we traded for him, when the Mets gave him that mega contract. I will say he turned it on here in the last 2 months, which was very encouraging. But it was very disappointing early on, and I think a big reason for why the team struggled so mightily in the beginning of this, or just overall in the season. I'm hoping it is just like Hayden mentioned, the Beltran case, and that he will just need to get his feet wet and get comfortable in New York, and that he'll have a big season next year. I wasn't asking for 30 home runs out of Francisco Lindor. I was hoping he'd at least live up to what he had previously done throughout his career. I know some people are going to go off and tell me about something about weighted runs created plus or whatever, something like that, and tell me that it is what he did. I'm not sending that toward you, Mets fan. I'm just saying people have said this is what he's been throughout his career. If you look closer at the numbers, but the average was down. The OBP was teetering for a large part of the season. So I'm just hoping next year he comes back and has a big season for us and we can forget all of this ever happened. I will say this, the defense was sparkling and fantastic all year long. And if that moment in the Yankees was the best moment that he gives us, then I'm really happy about that. Those 3 home runs were awesome.
I mean, he definitely did have some good moments, and there were some big games that he had individual games, but throughout the full course of the season, there were some bad games too, which happens to every player, but it just seems like he wasn't able to string those good games together game after game. And lastly, Mets fan, is there a resurgence? Is there a revenge tour? Was he unlucky? I mean, give us the full synopsis of what happened with Lindor.
Unlucky, yes. But, I mean, I think we all can say that this was disappointing. But alongside from those terrible moments in the first 2 months, I kind of saw some of this coming to an extent. But, I've gone over this before, but the main gist of it is, some people do need to realize what type of hitter he is. He's not this overly aggressive guy. He's not explosive. He's not he's an instinct first type of guy. Or no, he's not. Yes. Okay. Got it. Keep with me. Okay. If he feels like he needs to bunt the runner over, if it feels like he needs to work the count, walk. I know it's hard. He's going to do it. So that type of discipline is something that I do admire a lot about him. And that's one of the main reasons why he's on this Hall of Fame trajectory that he's on. And yes, he had a down year, but this year wasn't terrible. It was average to above average. And that's why a down year shouldn't be concerning, because he still is there, even though he's not on his best game. This kind of sounds like somebody else I know, but I said it a few weeks ago, slowly but surely, you'll get the Francisco Lindor that you traded for. I'm expecting him to take a bigger step forward and bring in a little bit more impact. Hopefully he can be healthy for the entire season. And everyone will be hopping on the resurgence bandwagon. Why not?
Yeah, what's so strange about Lindor is that his baseball savant page does look pretty good, but his regular old man stats don't look so good. So take that what you will. Everybody values different things. So to some people he had a good year, and to some people he had a bad year. So it depends on who you ask. Anyways, let's go to another guy who was unlucky, good baseball savant page, bad old man stats. Michael Conforto. So, Andrew, Rhino, did Michael Conforto play his last game in a New York Mets uniform?
Yeah, I mean, he had just bad batting average. He sucks. You know, he's going to go to the Atlanta Braves next year at 40 homers, probably win National League MVP, maybe a Gold Glove, maybe a couple, definitely an All-Star game, maybe a Silver Slugger, and then probably live up to the potential we've been waiting 4 years for. So, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't know my camera was on.
What about you, Hayden? Did Conforto play his last game as a Met in Truist Park against the Atlanta Braves, or will there be other games in the Mets uniform?
Listen, it would really suck to see Conforto walk, obviously, from the emotional part of it. I mean, Conforto's been one of the longest Met players tenured on this team. He's seen the highs, he's seen the lows. For most of Conforto's career, he's been, to an extent, a consistent player. And it really does suck to see Conforto pretty much slump and have a pretty unfortunate streak in the time that it really matters the most. I mean, besides the World Series and maybe a couple other times, it really does suck to see. Conforto's defense is not the concern. He has a good arm, good glove, tracks down, locates the ball well. No complaints there. It's just coming from the offensive point. Unless Rob Manfred and the MLB banned the shift this offseason, Conforto is easily a 300 hitter, no doubt. It's just Conforto can't beat the shift. And, I mean, he's not really hitting too many line drives to the right side. So it's just, ground balls to second base or, they get the shift on him, in this case, the shortstop. So Conforto's going to really have to start learning to go the other way. And he's done it before, so he is capable of it. Obviously, dude has great talent with this team. We just didn't see it this season. I hope he really takes that qualifying offer. We know today they said the Mets are going to offer it to him, and he is likely going to reject it. Well, you know what, Conforto? You were crying at the last game, potentially at Citi Field. So is it the money or is it the fans you actually care about? That's my question, because for someone who seems so passionate about this fan base, you'd think you'd accept the qualifying offer. Okay, get what, $18 million for a year? Not like, it's not going to die without it. And then really show yourself in 2023. That's what you think really the home guy would type to do. Scott Boras, he's a pain in the behind, so that's not the case. Personally, I do not think it is the last game Conforto will play. I think he's going to test the market, but I think he's going to come back to the Mets.
What about you, Tony? Do you think this is the last we've seen of Conforto in the orange and blue, or will he retain those colors?
Well, I really hope Zreese is in the stream right now, because in the words of Hawk Harrelson, he gone. Gone. Goodbye, Conforto. Goodbye. I would love to have Conforto on a qualifying offer. I fully believe the Mets are going to offer to him. He's not going to take it. He's going to ask for $90 million plus, which is way, way, way more than he deserves after this horrible season. He's been an inconsistent player his entire career. I don't want any part of him. The Mets should go in another direction if he declines their qualifying offer. Get a starting center fielder, put Brandon Nimmo in left field, and I don't know, find something for right field after that. But I'm all in on Starling Marte, honestly, at this point. Put him in center field. Conforto just outplayed himself of a big contract this year, and I'm not going to be the sucker that falls for it. Even if he goes on to have success elsewhere, I've seen enough, and I'm not willing to get burned by him in a Mets uniform.
Interesting, yes. I mean, that's the thing, is that you do run yourself that risk of, if Conforto does sign elsewhere and all of a sudden he finally puts together and is consistent every single year, it's all Mets. Mets let another one get away. Justin Turner 5.0. I mean, like, how many times do we have to see this happen? So, Mets fan, we know you love Conforto, but do you think he played the last game in a Mets uniform, or will he be somewhere else?
I think he's played his last game, and it pains me so much to say it because this is my guy right here, but like, do I think they need to move on from him? Not at all. But like I said, with the Epstein stuff, you got to come to reality at some point. Like, and the reality is that Conforto's a pending free agent. He had a down year. His agent is Scott Boras or Satan or whatever you want to call it. And there's a strong possibility that he won't be a Met next year. And I hate this because this is a player that I grew up watching. And, you know, this is a player that I looked up to since he was called up. He leads by example. He's one of those guys who's quiet. He doesn't say much. He plays a lot under the radar. I compare him a lot to Michael Brantley. And that's the reason why, for many reasons. I would love to bring him back because I think he's going to do awesome next year. But there's a lot of moving parts this offseason, so who knows? So if this was his last game here, if he has played his last game, thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure. But we'll see what happens. A lot of question marks.
Yeah, too bad he never hit like Brantley, though.
Yeah, Michael Brantley does have the good batting average. That's the one thing that's concerning. But I think when it comes down to Conforto, like you said, Mets fan, this is such a big offseason that obviously we just talked about the front office and the manager and all those expired free agents. And we were just talking about a little while ago. It's like, how many more times could you bring back the same group of guys? Even if Conforto is a good player, sometimes it feels like you just need new players for the sake of needing new players because just like we've seen this core for a few years now and they just haven't won anything at all. They haven't made the postseason once since 2015. I don't really even count 2016 because that was a wild card game, you know? And even that was a completely different team then. So since I would say like 2018, 2019 is when this new core came along, they haven't done anything yet. So I think that if you do have to not re-sign Conforto in order to build more depth, like get multiple players, get another infielder, another outfielder, another starting pitcher, another reliever, instead of just putting all of your money into Conforto, maybe that it works out better for the Mets long term, that you have just more guys contributing in other areas compared to just the one guy. So it will be risky. I do think that overall he will stay with the Mets only because we talk so much about Brody guys, Sandy guys. Sandy drafted him. Sandy said we did not get George Springer because of Mike Conforto. And even Sandy alluded to the fact that, like, even though Conforto had a down year, this isn't necessarily who he is. Like, Conforto has also had good years. Sandy Alderson did mention that in a press conference. So I do think that he will stay. But and we talk so much about Sandy having a price tag with players. I think he needs to certainly have a price tag with Mike Conforto. He's not someone you could overpay to keep because, you know, there's just so many other things going on that it's like, if you get him for a good deal, you keep him. If it's something ridiculous, if some team just goes crazy and gives him an insane offer, you just got to let him go. It's not worth it. And it will all depend on how the tax looks, you know. I mean, will there be a luxury tax? Will there be a floor? What will the penalty be? I mean, all those things are going to play into a factor on if you should retain Mike Conforto or not because of all the other guys that we're going to have discussions with as we will get to. Will Jeff McNeil even be on this roster? And not so much from a money standpoint, but for a positional standpoint, because once Javier Baez came along, Jeff McNeil shifts out to left field, and he didn't seem too happy all in all throughout the course of the season. Obviously, you had that raccoon thing. Then you had this week the whole story of there not being leadership in the clubhouse. Jeff McNeil does not look like a happy camper right now. He does not look like a happy squirrel. So, Hayden, you DFA'd McNeil quite a few times. So I think you can only DFA a guy so many times before you're even allowed to keep him on the roster. But will Jeff McNeil be on this roster in 2022 or will he be DFA'd by then?
Well, I don't know how many times I DFA'd him, but that'll be something to find out. Realistically, it would really just a really disappointing season for McNeil, obviously. I mean, just seeing this dude easily over a 300 hitter contending for the batting title. We all know how important batting average is. But realistically, though, this dude was a really, really solid reason why the Mets had a huge second half in 2019. We know he got a little injury prone, obviously, this season. And I kind of question where did it really start. We know at the end of the 2019 season, he did something to his rotator cuff, injured it, got some surgery over the offseason, missed like the final week of it. And then kind of since he's, I guess, having some difficulty swinging the bat and I guess just trying to get the ball in the air, line drive McNeil. And then we all know the hamstring was another reason, the way his stance was. We didn't know if it was uncomfortable for him to stand on his leg and put pressure on it. So was that affecting his swing? But McNeil was just a guy out there who could just do anything. You give him an 0-2 count and he'd hit a BABIP single to drive in Nimmo at second or whoever at third. He's not so much more so a table setter, but he's just a guy who I think just gets the job done, whether it's a BABIP, a walk. He's not really much of a power hitter to an extent, more just kind of a contact guy. Defensively is really the question. We know he was great at second base, and we know he stated he's seen the ball come off the bat much better on the right side of the field, so he's not going to play right field for the most part. Doesn't have the best arm, so you really got him at left second base, or I guess left field in this case, and those are the only two options left. Third base was not the best performance from him. And I just think, honestly, McNeil is probably pissed off right now. He had the whole, issue with Francisco Lindor. Javier Baez comes in, scoops McNeil out of a spot and says, bye-bye, go play 150 feet away from the outfield. Me and my boy are going to go take some reps and ground balls here together. So, I think that leads to, unfortunate tensions for McNeil. I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to get out because he kind of just kicked him out of a spot. And if you want to use him as a utility guy, it works. We see teams do it. We see the Dodgers do it. We see the Yankees do it. DJ LeMahieu, he's a great example. Yankees got him 2017. They had no idea where they were going to put him. They threw him at second. They threw him at third. They made him work. I don't know if that's the case for McNeil, to be honest with you. So Baez is likely going to stay. So I question with McNeil. He could be a bench bat. I think he's too good for that. But as of right now, I think he will be on this roster in 2022.
All right, interesting. Tony, do you think Jeff McNeil will be on here, or will he just be, I forget what we called him, terrible or horrible? He did have that one infamous tweet that led to a walk-off right after that, but then he went back to not playing so well.
Yeah, Tony's motivational speaking and coaching. It's I'm waiting to get some rights reserved for that. But I don't know about McNeil at this point. He does have 2 years left of control still on his rookie contract, maybe even a 3, if I'm not mistaken. 2. I don't see any reason to just let him walk and go, like DFA him. I don't think that's happening. But if a potential trade comes along where it improves a different area of the team, then certainly I could see him leaving. This was a very tough season for McNeil, and it doesn't help that we as fans are watching him scream and throw a fit in his helmet and his bat and rage every time he makes an out. Now, a lot of us are also kind of hypocrites in the sense because we say, we want our players to show emotion and be pumped and be pissed as we are. So sometimes I think it's a little hypocritical for us to, get on them, or McNeil in this case, for getting so heated. But it just felt like between that and the whole situation with Lindor and then Baez coming in and his role at second base being usurped from him, that I don't know how much time he has left with this team. I'm not even sure if he will be back next year. There's going to be so many changes, I think, going into the 2020 roster. So he could be playing elsewhere next year, depending on what the other moves the Mets make this offseason.
I like that you brought up his emotion because, like you said, we do want to see our players have a sense of urgency, have a sense of fight in. But I think what happens with Jeff is that he's so emotional, it affects his focus. I mean, I remember in September, he had an at-bat where he had a foul ball, and he got so mad. He was already young and everything, but he still was in the at-bat, and then all of a sudden he made it out shortly after that. So you don't want to let that emotion overtake your abilities. We saw it happen with Steven Matz far too often, where Matz gives up a hit, all of a sudden Matz is ready to throw his glove around the field, and then a home run right after that. So it's all about controlling that emotion, and if Jeff McNeil could somehow use that to his advantage as motivation, that would be much better suited than just ready to break things and feel like the world is out to get you and that he's so unlucky and that baseball hates him, because as soon as McNeil hit a line out, you just see him just drop to the squad, take the batting helmet like, oh my God, I'm so unlucky. This isn't fair. That's not the approach to take. It's like, you know what? I put a good swing on the ball. Next time it should fall. That should just be the way he approaches it. And then we saw Jeff in that Boston series, all of a sudden the half swing, the opposite field hits, the long AB against Chris Sale. All of a sudden we saw some vintage McNeil at bats. But like we said with Lindor, it's all going to come down to consistency. So,
and if I may add about Lindor, he's like two different players. Like, who is the real Jeff McNeil? Is he the 2018, 2019, first half 2020 guy that sprays the ball over the field like you just mentioned, Frank? Is he the guy that can hit for a 320, 330 average and still pop 10 or even 15 home runs? Or is he this pull-happy guy who doesn't hit for as high of an average? And this year, the most concerning thing for me was he was constantly stepping out of the box, running up the first base line. It seemed like he wasn't keeping, I'm not a baseball coach. I'm not a hitting coach. I'm not going to pretend like I am, but you could see he just looked so off balanced in the box this year. I feel like he was trying to do too much. I feel he was trying to pull the ball too much. And the aggression at the plate, swinging at the first pitch, swinging at balls, constantly in an 0-2 count. Who is Jeff McNeil? And that's kind of my biggest pet peeve with him right now, and that's why I'm very uncertain about if he will be on this team next year.
I think Jeff McNeil probably asked himself the same thing because, like you said, you do see just this drastic change in approach from him, and it is very inconsistent with the way he goes into at-bats and the kind of swings he takes, whether it is, running down the first baseline or it is the half swing. I think that when he came into the league in 2018, it was much more of the half swing, not so much, trying to pull the ball into right field. And you know what? It's kind of like, if I could use a basketball analogy, where when you start hitting threes, all of a sudden you want to shoot more threes because it went in. Whereas like when you hit a home run, you're like, oh, that felt good. I want to hit more home runs. You just keep pulling and pulling and pulling. Then all of a sudden you got away from your bread and butter. And what I like about Jeff McNeil, sorry, Andrew, to cut to your time, is that he was such an old school player that he was going tops of field. He was not striking out. He was not trying to pull everything like the way so many of these other players are nowadays. And I think you need that bit of old school, a little bit of an all-around hitter in order to balance out your Alonso, balance out your Conforto and Baez, guys who are taking these huge swings. I think that having McNeil sandwiched right in between them as a lefty bat, I think that's perfect for assembling a baseball team. But if he's not going to play like that kind of player, then what kind of role does he have? So, Andrew, he would have some good trade value, though. Don't get me wrong. As much as I like to see Jeff McNeil stay, we talk so much about, like, okay, well, you want to keep Stroman, you want to keep Baez, you want to keep Conforto. All of a sudden, money becomes very difficult, and we haven't even talked about external additions, guys that did not play with the Mets, because this team does need some improvement, because re-signing everybody is not just going to all of a sudden make the Mets a winning team. So would you then consider trading Jeff McNeil to get guys who have much lower salaries, still have control years, maybe a Ketel Marte or somebody like that, in order to improve this team?
If you can find a way to finagle Ketel Marte after Jeff McNeil's season, hell yeah. I don't think, obviously, his value isn't as high as it was a year ago, but I am all for exploring what I can get for him, especially, again, how I will talk about later. But my main focus is replenishing the farm system. And especially if Josh Burns is going to be the president of baseball ops and I get my way, I could see him turning Jeff McNeil into 3 Jeff McNeils, kind of like Chris Taylor's, where he can just find some dude in the minor leagues and from whoever's system, like, okay, that's the guy. He can be a Chris Taylor, or he throws 100 with a wipeout slider. Here's another bullpen arm better than Drew Smith. Sorry. Or guys like that. Maybe there's an extra arm they can bundle. And, hey, maybe we'll bundle the guy we're going to talk about next and get even more for undervalued players. Again, and players that if Javier Baez is re-signed, doesn't have the position, I don't want to see him in the outfield. I don't care if the analytics say he's good. He's terrible out there. And JD, which we'll get to in a second, who both don't have spots on this roster if Javi is back here. So you can bundle both of them, replenish the farm, but also get higher AA, AAA type players, but that can replenish the farm system that it desperately needs to be.
It's an interesting point you bring up for sure. But let's go to Mets fan. We were talking earlier about the way Jeff McNeil felt the world was against him. Very unlucky. He wants to, throw the bat, throw the helmet, throw the batting gloves, rip his jersey, just all that stuff. So as far as the analytics and the metrics, his K rate was still pretty good, but he was chasing it, and just the eye test didn't look so good. The kind of swings he was taking. So do you think Jeff McNeil will be on this team next year? And who knows? If we do get this, is another thing that's interesting to think about. when we do get that new president of baseball operations, how do they value Jeff McNeil? Do they think McNeil's not that good? And do they not value as much as maybe Sandy Alderson does? And would that make him a more likely trade candidate?
I don't know. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now. That's like literally my answer. I have no idea what they're going to do with Jeff McNeil. I mean, there's obviously like the DH coming back. You have so many like options with the DH now. I mean, what are you going to do with JD Davis? Is he going to be dealt? I feel like you're going to figure out what happens with McNeil once other things unravel, like JD Davis, like of course Dominic Smith, who we haven't even who is a left fielder, right? So, and it's just like, you don't know what you're going to do with Albert Almora. So, it's like,
I have a couple.
I have no clue. He's just,
Caveat.
I don't know. It's all a ripple effect. And first, I mean, obviously the first step is the president of baseball operations, get somebody in there. And it's all going to go in a sequence and it's all going to go pretty quick. Because, and I will credit Aaron Drew this time when he said that the CBA does expire, December 1st. So that was all him. He created the CBA as well, if you didn't know. So that's the reason why everything's uncertain. So blame Andrew for that. So, yeah. So this stuff is going to go very quickly and we'll see what happens with Jeff McNeil. I have no freaking clue. Usually I have the answer to everything and I'm right about everything, but I have nothing for this.
Okay, so then let's see what your answer for this one is. He's a guy that a couple of us mentioned in our responses. JD Davis, he undergoes hand surgery. The hand is what kept him out for a good portion of the year. That middle part of that year, the June, July aspect of it, because his hand was bothering him, his ligaments, all things like that. And even when he came back, he said that it was still bothering him, and he definitely was not the player that we know that JD Davis is capable of. And as soon as the season's over, he's like, listen, I've got to get this hand fixed. And he did. He got surgery on it. And then JD Davis was interviewed and talked about the way that he feels he's been treated. It doesn't feel like he's going to be a New York Met. And we all felt this way when we saw that throughout the offseason. When the Mets were looking at a player, it usually was a third baseman. When the Mets were looking to make a trade candidate, it usually was an infielder that could play some third base. So it always looked like it always had to do with replacing JD Davis. So, Mets fan, let's go back to you. JD Davis, he undergoes the hand surgery. And now what is his future with the Mets?
I mean, it's crazy how you say that, Frank, about how he was treated in this organization. And I mean, I'll come out and say it. This guy was treated like garbage all year. I don't think he has a future with this team. I think he's a very movable part if you talk about like this entire roster. And it sucks because he is a good guy, but like, let's point out the year that this guy's had. I mean, he started off the year as one of the only guys hitting in this lineup. And then he gets hurt. He gets strung along on this long rehab assignment that nobody even knew what was going on. He plays through an injury while the Mets had other options like Guillorme and VR and Peraza. I mean, Peraza was out for a little bit. And then if you don't like that, Mark Vientos. Why not? I mean,
Khalil Lee.
Yeah, of course, but like I don't think Khalil Lee is going to play third base because he can throw lefty.
Well, JD didn't even start.
We can try that. I like that experiment. That's cool.
No, but what I'm saying is that JD, like, he didn't even play third base. For the most part,
Yeah.
Once Baez came along, he literally was a bench bat. So, I mean, if JD is not performing offensively, and clearly had the highest WRC plus in the minor leagues, one of the highest WRC pluses, why not let him swing the bat off the bench? It was better than some of the other options they were using.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the year on top of his future being questioned, Sandy basically shopping him because he's a Brody guy. It's nuts. I mean, this whole playing through injuries that he's done. I mean, it's stupid, especially when you have so many options that you had. And that's the Wilpon Pedro shit right there, and it cannot happen. And I doubt that was their intention, but considering how the front office has been this year, I would not be surprised.
And what really frustrates me is that I thought we were done with things like this where, there would be more transparency when it came to injuries. We would not try to have guys playing through injuries. I think Dominic Smith was playing through injuries. He alludes to that at one point in the season. He did not look like himself. then obviously the whole thing with Jacob deGrom was completely botched. You're also saying, oh, there's a tear in his UCL, and deGrom says, no, my UCL is totally fine. And we just never knew what was going to deGrom. It's a little bit of inflammation. He'll be back. Oh, no, he won't be back. Yes, he will. No, he won't. So the way the Mets handled it, whether it was JD or those other guys, it was really bad. So Mets talk with Hayden. What do you think JD Davis's future is? Is he a guy that is DFA? Does he get traded? Does he become a DH, third baseman, left field? I mean, what do you do with JD?
Yeah, it's really questionable with JD Davis. And, I'm going to agree with you guys. He really wasn't treated the best. He had the injury, and then he didn't perform well, and he was just kind of thrown on the bench for most of the season. And honestly, it came to a point where I forgot about JD Davis. I think Jonathan VR was pretty much the big person that was out there, and then JD Davis was that guy, right? So yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think that's going to affect his personality with the team. I still think it's fine. But it just comes to question is, what do you do with JD? I mean, like you said, Mets have plenty of choices for the designated hitter spot. Most likely that'll come in 2021, 2022. JD Davis would probably be one of the best players for that role because he's terrible at defense. I mean, left field, this dude is clueless out there. He can't locate a ball. Not the strongest arm in the outfield. And I mean, he made like one good play in Cleveland, and he was like confused and looking all over the place for it. So defensively, not the best guy. Third base, we've seen him at third base earlier on in the season. This dude was just so scared to throw the ball. We see that, typical glove slapping and then release. And he was just so scared to throw the ball and, throwing the ball 10 feet away from Pete Alonso. So, definitely concerning defensively. Offensively seems to this season, he just seemed to be a 0-1, 0-2, 0-3 type of guy. Couldn't hit a basic four-seam fastball high and in the zone. And just, that really seemed the season for JD Davis. Didn't really go the other way. He went for some power the other way in 2019. Some great examples there. But as of right now, we know the hand surgery was why. At first, I kind of thought he was kind of like a juice ball victim. Because, we saw in 2019 the way, he would hit the ball and it would just fly out. And, we saw this season, it kind of just went and just died out on the warning track. Oh, caught by the outfielder. So at first I thought it was maybe a juice ball thing. And then, now I figure out he has the hand issue. And I mean, he played through this. So that really was making sense to why he wasn't really swinging at many pitches and was taking a lot of pitches. And when he was hitting the ball, it wasn't really doing much. And he wasn't really hitting for power this season. So that's also explains why. So, I guess we'll see with JD Davis. We'll see how he could recover from the surgery. Pretty badass photo of him, like, chilling on the bed, putting like Matt Harvey, get the middle finger or something. But obviously, you hope JD Davis can recover. Likely he could still be a bench bat and prove himself next season or spring training even.
Yeah. And what about you, Andrew? I mean, this is another guy that since he had a down year, it hurt his trade value. So what is his future?
Before Andrew goes, I apologize. Yes. Here we go. This is obvious, but let's just put it in stone here.
Okay.
What is it?
I don't know who has this source, but apparently it's very, that's what I'm seeing is they're a good source. So they're extending a qualifying offer. You can pretty much like make that prediction and say, it's probably going to happen. So it's either this person has sources or they don't, but it looks like the Mets are extending a qualifying offer to Noah.
And Noah said he hopes he gets the qualifying offer in a press conference. So, I mean, that should mean that all signs are pointing that Noah will be back on a one-year deal for that $18 to $19 million range. So, I mean, at least that's one pitcher that we have on the books next year to go along with deGrom, Walker, and Carlos Carrasco. So it looks like Andrew is in the middle of some conversation. Tony, are you there or kind of there? So, Tony, I'll go to you for JD Davis instead while Andrew, gets his bearings back and being interrupted very rudely. So, Tony, what do you think about JD Davis's future?
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of similar with Jeff McNeil and Dom Smith. All these guys showed really strong 2019s, 2020s as well for the most part. And I am afraid of the idea that those guys leave the team and have great success elsewhere. So I am concerned about that. Here's the thing. JD Davis is without a position. I was hoping after the 2019 season that he was going to be able to turn into that Chris Taylor, that Kike Hernandez, that one of those kinds of guys for us, that utility player. Obviously was never going to be a great defender at any position you put him at, but hoping that he'd be passable there because he could hit 20 to even 25 home runs if he was to get 500 at-bats. That's not been the case. He's been injury prone. Fielding is still terrible, and he hit okay this year. The average was great, but the power wasn't really there. And a big part of that was he just wasn't getting the playing time, mainly due to the injury. So I'm hoping they can find a way to squeeze him in on this roster, just like I am with Jeff McNeil and with Dom Smith. But like I said, there's going to be so many roster moves, so many potential trades and free agent signings. I can't guarantee that any of them, let alone JD Davis, will be here next season.
Interesting. And what about you, Andrew? What do you think is going to be happening with JD Davis by the time the season rolls around? I mean, will the Mets...
Can I interrupt again? No.
Rhino abuse. What is this? Go, Mets fan. What do you got?
No. I was actually doing that as a joke. No, go.
No,
I was just there to troll you.
We got it. Anyways, Andrew, for the last time, guess this one more time. What do you think about JD Davis?
I love JD. I mean, we're talking about JD Davis, not Josh Donaldson. Oh, I'm sorry. JD, if you guys know, I wanted Josh Donaldson, but we have JD Davis, and I was told by everyone that JD Davis was better than Josh Donaldson. And look what happened. JD, obviously, he's playing hurt, and I don't care. Somebody's going to tweet at me, and he knows who he is. I don't care what the WRC plus. I don't care what his ground ball. I don't care. JD was a guy that great 2019, subpar 2020, and we came in, like I think Tony said, kind of the utility, maybe the corner outfielder, maybe a third baseman. If the tub at first base needed a day off, you could put JD there as an emergency situation, even though it probably would have been Dom. And what does he do? And yes, he's injured, and that's going to be the excuse that we're going to give this guy. Give him. He's playing hurt. But that does not mean I'm guaranteeing him a spot on this roster next year. A la Jeff McNeil, value's down. But again, there is some traits that, great bat-to-ball skill when he's right. Guy hits a lot of line drives. Guy goes to the opposite field pretty well. So that could be appealing to teams like Tampa Bay. Potentially being a guy, they need a third baseman. I know they got Wander at short. Just saying. They got some pitching. Never wrong to take some pitching from Tampa Bay. But again, I'm not, kind of like Jeff McNeil, I'm not guaranteeing him a spot on this roster. If, filling the bench, I'm not against it. But also, again, I will continue to beat the drum. If I can replenish that farm system and there's assets out there to improve the roster, spending money and not trading the capital, but then being able to take the excess capital and turning it into prospects, I am kind of in favor of that. So, again, I'm not handing JD a spot. If there's a trade that fulfills some extra arms or an extra depth minor leaguer, I'd explore those options.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this whole idea of maybe trading a player for an executive. I think Jay Davis is a good candidate for that. If I had to trade Jay Davis to get an executive from Tampa Bay or from Milwaukee, I don't see why not. I mean, because it's going to be hard just to get a guy that we want for present baseball operations. We saw last year. It's a very hard thing to do. So, I mean, maybe JD has that kind of value. It's not Francisco Alvarez.
And you can waste a third baseman here. I mean, let's be real for a second. You have Guillorme, right? Villar's not going to come back, but or he might come back. Who knows? But
Robinson Cano,
Vientos, Beatty, Robinson Cano, the best option available. Mauricio. I mean, you have so many Baez, you have so many guys who can play third base.
Correct.
And it's like you can waste a third baseman here. And if it can get you an outfield piece, it's all yours.
Yeah.
I
mean, it does come to that. Eduardo Escobar. I mean, there's a lot of available options at that particular position. And like we said, and Jay's not even that great at third base. It's very similar. We talked about kind of with Dom, or now if Baez is here at second base, he does have a position that he plays well that he could be at every single day. And like we said with the DH, there's so many candidates for the designated hitter. Is that Cano's job? Is that Alonso's job? I personally think Mark Vientos would be a very appealing DH option. I think he could handle that role pretty well because he showed me in spring training a good eye for a young ball player, and then it displayed great power numbers in the minor leagues. Very Pete Alonso-esque. It was very similar to what Alonso did in the minors. So I think that's something I would look at for Mark Vientos if I could get value otherwhere. If it's an outfielder or a pitcher or executive with Jay Davis, it's something I got to explore. So let's get into Javier Baez. And now we're going to talk about what would you offer Javier Baez. So we're looking at what kind of years and just what kind of AAV. You don't have to give me an exact number like 175 million, but just like how many years and how much money per year. Because when it comes to luxury tax, which is what matters to everybody, it all matters on what is your AAV for every single player. So Andrew, let me start with you. You're a guy that you're on the Javier Baez bandwagon. You like GM kind of stuff. So what would be your offer for Javier Baez?
And this is, again, it's kind of a question you need to answer is how does he value himself? Is he valuing himself as a shortstop or is he valuing himself as a second baseman? Because there's two different markets for two different positions he can play. If he's going to do what I think he's probably going to try to make himself as a shortstop because he'll make more money as a shortstop. If he's valuing himself as a second baseman in the Mets' perspective, you look at some of the bigger contracts as second baseman. Obviously, our good buddy Robinson Cano has the biggest contract for a second baseman at 10 years, $240. I don't expect that. But I do expect a similar kind of offer to Jose Altuve, which the Astros gave him 7 years, $163 million. That's about $23 million per season. If you go on Sport Track, which again, it's not the most reliable source, but it is a source I use for marketing contracts. They have Javi's projected AAV average around 24 million. So you give him 7 years, 63. If you want to round that up to give him 24 even, I'm not against that. But I'm on Team Javi. Obviously, I would like to get, I know, long-term deals. Some people get mad and get crazy about it because he's going to be turning 29 next year. A 7-year deal, you're going to pay him until he's 35. Yep, 36, 35. What is Javier Baez going to look on the back half of that deal? But also, you have to look at it kind of how the Cubs did. If you have a chance to win the World Series in that first 3 years and get the ring in those first 3, I don't care what happens in the back half. So a Javi kind of extension, 7 by like 165, we'll call it.
I would sign that deal for sure. I mean, I think he's probably going to try to ask for a little more, but it all depends on what the market's going to be because Javier Baez finds himself probably in the most unfortunate year to be a free agent when you have so many other guys that can play shortstop and also could play second base. I mean, some of these other options out there like a Marcus Semien, somebody like that. He's a guy that could play both. So I think that is something that goes against Javier Baez. So Hayden, what would be your contract offer that you would give to Javier Baez? Hayden, you're muted right now. No. Okay. I'll let Tony go while Hayden works on the audio stuff.
All right.
What? I heard audio. No.
Hello?
Yes, there he goes.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know. I was watching the Tampa Bay Rays game, 1-0. Tampa Bay Rays, bottom first. Wander Franco continues to create an on-base streak, creating some history with an RBI double to drive in Randy Arozarena, 2 potential back-to-back Rookie of the Years. Javier Baez. Yeah, going to be interesting this offseason. Obviously, I believe he probably will get a fair amount of cash. In terms of extensions, he's probably going to want to stay in New York. I think he likes it here. He likes, he likes Francisco Lindor, his BFF. He has the swag. He has the drip. Cool guy. Baez is going to be 29 offseason. Okay, so that's prime age. Obviously, it'll probably be anywhere from a 5, 6, 7-year deal. And I could see him making anywhere from 20 to maybe a little bit below 30 million. So times that by 6, 7. I'm not a calculator, so I can see him probably making around that. Andrew,
that's a pretty fair. It looks like that's what the market value is for
I'm
him.
not a calculator. That's a good one. I like
All right,
that.
so Metro, what does your calculator say for Mr. Baez?
I really like what Andrew had to say. 7 years, 165. I'd definitely sign up for that. I think that his agent's probably going to start their asking price at like 240. He's not going to get that. I think he'll get potentially 200 from a very desperate bidder, but I could see him signing even for like that 165 to 175 range. Frank, you brought up a great point. An unfortunate time for him to be a free agent, considering the rest of the shortstop free agent class. I was looking at his numbers. He had a very good year. So I really seriously doubt this, But it popped into my head. I wonder if he would even consider getting a 1-year deal with the average annual value of like $25 million this year, and then potentially being that standalone top free agent in next year's free agent class of shortstops. He's going to be what, 29? How old is he right now? Do you guys know?
Yeah,
He's
he'll be 29.
28. Yeah, he's 28 now.
Okay, so I mean, little sketchy for him to consider doing that, trying to go into free agency, basically entering his 30s. Excuse me. So I don't see him doing that, but I mean, it's an idea. It's an idea where he gets the average annual value that he's expecting out of a long-term contract, and he might be able to add on to it in next year's free agency, being that lone shortstop.
Okay, what do you want to say, Andrew?
Yeah, if he does do the 1-year option, the only competition he would have is Trey Turner. I think that's the only elite second base middle infielder that would be available. So it's something to think about.
Who I
Maybe
had
1 plus an option.
He's getting locked down this offseason. There's no way. They got Seager out of there. I mean, he's getting locked down.
Yeah, I think the other problem that Baez runs himself into is that, like you said, he did have a good year this year, particularly when he was with the Mets. He was much better than he was with the Cubs. So I think if you are an expiring free agent, you want to capitalize off of your good year. We've seen what happened with Conforto right now. You go to free agency on a bad year, it makes things a lot more difficult. And shortstop is a position that just in all of Major League Baseball is very stacked. So if all these other guys get signed and you say, let me wait next year, all of a sudden you still don't have a lot of bidders because so many teams are like, well, I already gave Corey Seager a big deal, so I'm out of the mix. Another team's like, oh, I gave Trevor Story a big deal. I can't get Baez. All of a sudden, so many teams have a shortstop that, like, there's nobody left to sign Baez. So then he comes to the Mets to play second base. And he said that the Mets are the one team he would play second base for because of the Francisco Lindor connection. And obviously the whole Lindor connection with Steve Cohen saying, if he wants them to keep Baez, they're probably going to keep Baez. And the fact that I think this should play into consideration, the fact that you gave away Pete Armstrong to get Baez, I think that should make it even more of a priority to keep him because you don't just want to get rid of Pete Armstrong for nothing, for, a second half of a season, in a season where you weren't doing too well. I think that'd be pretty foolish. So, Mets fan, I think the only one that hasn't gone yet. What would be your contract offer for Javier Baez?
Oh, it's so hard to put a number on Baez because he can be a very confusing player to evaluate. But, this man does so many things to help you win. And it's so tempting to just go all freaking in. So 2018, it was definitely his best year. Finished second in the MVP voting. That was the highest peak. And he's still just as talented as his MVP self. But then you ask, can he be that same player again? Which then you add on to our specialty in the market we play in. Can he do it in New York? Now, Baez can be a frustrating hitter, and he can make mistakes sometimes. But if he ignites the guy to his right, like he did, I mean, we were kind of falling out of it, but like it was promising to see. I would have no hesitation to lock down that middle infield for a very long time. Now, here's what I would do. Now, Tony did say something about a 1-year deal, kind of taking a kind of a bet on himself with the shortstop market. Now, this would be my offer. My offer would be 7 years, $191 million. Now, here's why that sounds a little too specific there, and you're kind of wondering. Now that equals out to a 27.3 AAV, but I will have the first year worth $23 million. Now, after the first year, give him a player option, and if he takes it, he'll get a $5 million raise, $28 million AAV for the rest of the contract, which will be 6 years, $168 million. Now, this way, he can play a full season in New York. He'll have the option to test free agency next year at age 29, which apparently, I did not know this, but I looked this up today. Apparently, that's the highest rated peak age, 29, for free agency in the MLB in the last decade and a half. So the last 15 years. 15 years, yes. So I mean, that's what I would do. But then you also do have that question is if he plays horribly, then he has the option to just re-sign and get more money. But then you also are like, okay, he's been an MVP before. He's been at this level. It's not like he's just going to completely regress, right? Right. But I mean, that's what I would do. But like, just depending on how much value, I don't know if it's completely that I'm high on him just not being a conservative ball player like most of this team. But yeah, that's what I would do. 7 years, 191 million, but the player option and the raise.
I like that idea, but I would do it opposite. I would front load it the first year, make it 27 million, and then the preceding years make it 23 million. Because if he has a down year, he's probably going to still take 23 million over the next 6 years. If he has a really good year, he's probably going to still take 27 million and not opt out. So I don't think it really gives him that option as much.
Yeah, you can add like incentives too.
Yeah, I think what comes down to is that like
a thing, you know.
Yeah, like you were saying with incentives, I think it is more important to have that lower AAV long term, because then once you eventually do an extension for maybe Alonso or Brandon Nimmo, and there will come a point in time where the Mets do have just a lot of money on the books, you would like to at least have one guy who doesn't have a crazy AAV, just long term. If you're going to have Baez that long, you're like, oh my God, we're still paying Baez, whatever it is, 27 million, whereas we could be paying him 23 million. So if you want to just go off on this first year and then go from there, I think that definitely would make a lot of sense for Baez. And like you said, he is someone that can be frustrating. He will swing at some pitches. You're like, oh my God, what are you swinging at? You're going to end up on Barstool, and everybody's going to laugh at you and lol Mets. And he'll have a game where maybe he strikes out 4 times or 5 times. But then he will have some games where he hits a home run, makes a great slide that scores you a run, makes a great defensive play, and helps you win a game. And he does it late in the game too, not in the first inning. He'll do it in the 9th inning, in the 8th inning. And he helps you win games. So that's the give or take with Javier Baez. He is by no means a perfect player. He definitely is flawed. But he does do a lot of things to help your team win. And I think it will come down to, will he fit with the rest of these guys? You cannot have Javier Baez on a team full of guys that strikes out and chases a lot. So if Jeff McNeil is playing at his best form and you have Brandon Nimmo in your lineup and you have Francisco Lindor in your lineup, those are 3 guys that are not going to chase. So Baez meshes much better with those guys than he would with, let's say, a Yankees team where everybody's swinging for the fences, everybody's striking out. Baez would be a disaster on that team because he would have a whole team full of him. So I think that you got to make sure you have the right balance for him. And it will depend on what's going on with these other guys that we still have to get to. So next up is Noah Syndergaard, who we saw is most likely taking the qualifying offer. And we got to see 2 outings from Noah Syndergaard. So, Tony Metro, what did you make out of those 2 outings from Noah Syndergaard? And how would you feel that, you know what, he's going to get $18 million based off of 2 innings?
Yeah, you know what? We've talked about this a lot with the uncertainty of the Mets rotation. You know, what is DeGrom's injury? Is he going to be able to stay healthy all season next year? Marcus Stroman's a free agent, and then all the other guys in there. I'm a big advocate of bringing Noah Syndergaard back on this qualifying offer. I didn't watch his second appearance against the Braves. I understand he gave up 2 runs, I believe, in that inning. He had a clean 1-2-3 inning in his first rehab appearance. The thing that is concerning for me about Syndergaard is we know he was advised not to throw breaking balls because it was putting stress on his elbow, and that's why he got shut down in June during his first rehab stint. So when can he start throwing breaking balls again, and how effective will they be? That is a bet, though, that I'm willing to take on a 1-year qualifying offer. So hope that he's going to be able to have a very normal offseason like he has in years past before the Tommy John surgery, and he'll be able to get back to full strength, throwing all of his pitches. And I hope this was kind of a learning lesson. And I know people don't want to hear this. I've always kind of thought of him as just a thrower and not a great pitcher. I think he was a great pitcher in the beginning. I think he got really caught up with trying to light up the radar gun over the last 2 years, though, before he got hurt. Hopefully now he realizes, look, I can't depend on 101, 99 every single time. And he should look at his teammate DeGrom as well, who had by far the most amount of pitches over 100 miles per hour, and takes a learning advice from him and realize, hey, man, it's just not a long-term thing you can do. And hopefully he can get a little more crafty.
What about you, Hayden? What do you think about Noah Syndergaard's outings, and how do you feel about the way Noah Syndergaard will pitch on this 1-year contract in 2022?
Yeah, we're going to have to see what Noah Syndergaard really goes into this offseason. Obviously, I think it comes to the point where I feel we really worked with Syndergaard so much, and I would really just hate to see the Mets just throw it away with Syndergaard. One, we've worked with him for the last year, 2.5 years with the Tommy John. And then prior to that, with all of his other injuries, the forearm, the blisters, a lot of the other injuries he's really developed over his, I guess, career. The Tommy John is obviously the most serious thing. So I would really just hate for the Mets to just bring him back for 2 innings and then just say, you know what? See ya, Syndergaard. We work so much with this dude. Like Tony said, it's going to be questionable with the breaking pitches, the slider, how much effective he could be. We have a couple months till spring training. I mean, we'll see what he can get done this offseason. Hopefully he can work with Hefner and some of his pitching staff and the physical therapists as well as spring training. That's the point. So we'll see what he can get accomplished then. He's going to talk with his agent this offseason, obviously, and the qualifying offer is the most reasonable thing. Teams would be willing to want him if the Mets don't give him the qualifying offer in some miracle or he rejects it, which I don't think that will happen. But there will be teams out there that will want him. I think he pumped out at 96 at one point in the Braves game. So that's pretty solid coming back from Tommy John. I mean, not pitching since September of 2019. That's good to hear. Like we said, we're just going to have to be cognizant and mindful of the breaking pitches, the slider. And that's really it. Overall, I'm hoping Syndergaard could really be worth something because, like I said, we invested so much into him already. I heard, but we have Syndergaard. What do we do with Syndergaard when he comes back? You hate to see it.
And what about you, Mets fan? Because this is a team that they had a really weird year when it came to starting pitching. We obviously talked about DeGrom having the injury. We saw Carrasco miss the first portion of the season. When he came back, he wasn't himself. Taijuan Walker was very inconsistent. We saw David Peterson get hurt. We saw Joey Lucchesi get hurt. Jordan Yamamoto get hurt. Obviously, Noah Syndergaard had his setback. So how do you feel about Noah Syndergaard's return and how he will be next year? And just going forward long term, that if Noah is not able to ever get the 100-mile-per-hour fastball back because he didn't have it this year, how will he perform as a pitcher?
I think it was such a frustrating year for the guy. Not only the guy recovered from Tommy John surgery, but also COVID. So it's weird. I think there's a lot of question marks, of course, and just add it to the list at this point of what there's a lot of question marks for this team. I mean, he most likely will come back on a qualifying offer. I know he wants to be here. He's praised Steve Cohen. He's praised the organization. He's praised, the new ownership that's come in, even though he wasn't even throwing at that point. One thing I do like is that, since he wasn't able to throw breaking pitches, I was really looking out for the disparity between his fastball and his sinker. And they seem pretty tight in velocity. So it's not like they one is dropped and one hasn't. They seem like they're both at that 94 to 96 range, and they're all going on that pace of possibly bringing his velocity back to be that effective pitcher. Now, I do think that he does need that velocity back a little bit, get that, 97, 98, because of the uncertainty with the breaking pitches. He has a nice curveball. He has a nice slider, but it's like you just don't know what he's going to do. He didn't throw a single one this year, and he threw a combination of how many pitches did this guy throw? He threw
not that many.
Yeah, he did not throw that many. So he threw 26 pitches this year. So like you don't know, is he going to be a reliever? Is he going to be a starter? He hasn't gone past one inning. I mean, you just don't know, but as Hayden said, we've worked with this guy for a long time. He was a huge piece in one of Sandy's delights in his career in that trade with R.A. Dickey and Josh Tolley. Yep, and then Darno, of course, but we don't talk about him. We don't even know what happened to him, right? But like I doubt it's like 2 innings. Okay, after Tommy John, COVID, and all the praise that he's given this organization and how much he likes to be here, I don't think it's going to be like, you're out of here, Yeah, I think, and obviously we just got that news from the qualifying offer. So I think it's very likely. He talked about how he wanted to come back, and it's a bet that I'm definitely willing to take. You can never have enough pitching, as we all know. We've had 80,000 arms fall off this year, so there you go. I like seeing him back. I loved it because it gave me that, especially at Citi Field, it gave me that, that World Series vibe from 2015. The crowd cheering his name, crowd going crazy every time he threw a strike. I mean, it was awesome. Love to see him back next year. Probably will. Love Syndergaard, and hopefully he can return to what he can, what he was. But we'll see. Everybody recovers different.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, you never know how a pitcher is going to look after the Tommy John. So, Andrew, if he is a guy that, let's say, the breaking balls do not come back the way you hope, the curveball is the same, changeup isn't the same, and you do have to put him in that Garrett Crochet kind of role as a reliever who does have some starting pitching experience, do you think that's something that he is suited for, or is he a guy that really needs to be in the rotation? And if you're going to be like, you know what, I'm going to give the guy $10 million, he might only be a reliever for me, is that something you would be willing to do?
Well, I mean, he's making me look great because he needs to replace our overrated closer in Edwin Diaz. You put Noah Syndergaard in the ninth inning, you feel a hell of a lot better.
Count your days, and
obviously,
count your days. I'm telling you.
And I mean, he is also better than that setup guy that we call a Puerto Rican. I mean, he was pretty bad this year too. I mean, I don't really count him as a Puerto Rican. It's a quarter, but besides the point. But yeah, pretty much. I mean, again, he's gonna look great. At this point, yeah. Again, Noah, he pitched well. It's 2 innings. I mean, we're gonna break down, the sinker slider ratio, the changeup. Mets fan can give you that and make a video about it if you guys want it. Again, it's you. Obviously, if he's taking the qualifying offer, it's $18 million. At that price, you want him to be a starter. But if he can't throw his breaking stuff, 2-pitch pitcher, that's a reliever in my mind. You can't be a successful pitcher unless you're throwing 105 with a like his changeup is great, but he doesn't throw 105 anymore. So I know that you're going to say sinker, Matt. You say 3 fingers. What was that, Mets fan? 3 pitches or no?
3 pitches. Yeah.
3 pitches. Okay, the sinker. MLB The Show is the same thing. But pretty much, again, if he's only throwing 2 pitches, he'd be a way more effective reliever because, again, they tell him once a day, throw if you got the velocity back, use your inning, do it. You have your changeup, work the 2 pitches. If eventually he can get his slider, be able to throw his slider, which I think that's his more effective pitch, off the 100-mile-an-hour heat, obviously you get him back in the rotation. But again, arms are arms, and if he's coming back at the bigger, 18.5 million, whatever the qualifying offer is going to be this year, you'd hope he'd be a starter. But if you're not going to be able to throw his breaking ball at all or slider at all, you'll make him a reliever. And again, it's another high leverage arm you could potentially add. I know Edwin Diaz is pretty shaky, so replace Edwin Diaz and make him the setup guy.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about Noah is that let's say that velocity does come back. Tony, you're mentioning about how DeGrom threw so many 102s. Eventually, that does a lot of wear and tear in your arm. And if Noah has to pitch significantly less innings as a reliever, he could throw those 100s, and it won't have the same wear and tear because he won't have as many innings under his belt. So there's something to consider about when you're looking at Noah's health long term. And now we go to the other big time pitcher, Marcus Stroman. This is a really interesting one because Stroman, as always, has been very active on social media. And we've seen some reports that the Cubs are looking at Marcus Stroman, the Blue Jays, the Padres. The Padres spent a lot of money last offseason, and so did the Toronto Blue Jays. And the Cubs have plenty of cap space. So will the Mets bring back Marcus Stroman? And then number 2, since all those teams are interested in Marcus Stroman, should the Mets be willing to get into a bidding war in order to retain him? So let's go with a huge Marcus Stroman advocate first. Tony Metro, I know you and Marcus Stroman are very tight. So will he be back, and should the Mets be in a bidding war to ensure that he gets back?
I don't know why you say that. Me and Stro guy are huge homies, man. We're total homies. But no, I don't have any disdain for him. I admitted that he actually was the biggest surprise for me this year. I think he had an awesome season for the Mets. Stayed healthy the entire year. His numbers were great. And he brings vibes, is whatever you want to say. But the social media stuff kind of ticks me off, but whatever. He's not going to the Cubs. Okay. They're going to go through a 5-year rebuild. He's not going to the Cubs. Okay. Marcus Stroman does not want to go finish his career and never have a chance to play in the playoffs again, or let alone a World Series. He's not going to the Cubs. But there's going to be a lot of suitors, and the Mets may end up getting in a bidding war, and I am totally on board with that. His numbers were as good, if not better, than Garrett Cole's this year. So, I mean, what are we – it's like he's going to get paid, but there's got to be a certain limit. And for me, I don't think I'd be willing to go over $130 million. I think even that's a lot higher than I want to do, but he's going to be asking for the moon. So the Mets need to be prepared for the idea that he may go to another team because he's going to ask for a ton of money. If you told me he was going to sign that Zach Wheeler contract that he signed with the Phillies, I would sign that on the dotted line right now today, but I think he's going to be asking for a lot more than that.
Well, Tony, you just said something very concerning. He pitched better than Garrett Cole, and look what Garrett Cole got, over $300 million. So, I mean, would you be willing to go $200 for Marcus? I mean, that's over $100 million less. So,
no, I'm not. I'm not paying a starting pitcher and entering his 30s that much money. That's a 20.
Well, it wouldn't be a 10-year deal by any stretch.
No,
but I mean, hopefully be in the 5 to 6 range. You would hope, but I mean, it is something to consider because you said it. I mean, if he's better than Garrett Cole and if he says that in the negotiating process, like, listen, Garrett Cole get paid. I outpitched him. I outpitched Trevor Bauer because Bauer was suspended all year. Look what he's getting paid. So, I mean, if he brought that to the table, I mean, how could you really argue? So, Hayden, what are your thoughts on Marcus Stroman and how his offseason is going to go? Should the Mets bring him back? And is he a guy that you would be willing to bid with other teams, use some of Uncle Stevie's money to make sure that he stays here?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how the Stro Show reacts this offseason. We know already he's been on Instagram doing live streams talking about – that's fair. We would like to see how Stroman is pretty much going to see this offseason. He's been doing a lot of live streams on Instagram talking about pitching mechanics and all that stuff. Cool, whatever. People are worried about that. I don't see what's so bad about that. We know that there were some reports that he was interested in joining the Padres. We know that there were some talks about a reunification with the Toronto Blue Jays. And I mean, that would just be crazy. I mean, you look at what this Blue Jays pitching staff, I mean, Robbie Ray, Alek Manoah, and then you add Marcus Stroman to that. That's awesome. Pretty much like stated before, Stroman was a guy who claimed to be a Cy Young pitcher, and we didn't really see that in 2019. I mean, looking at his stats this season, he has a 10-13 win and loss record, which is terrible. I mean, it's terrible. But I mean, honestly, 3.02 ERA, 179 innings pitched, 158 strikeouts, 1.15 WHIP. Basic stats right there. That's pretty solid. Like you said, Stroman had better numbers than a lot of these guys. Overall, like we said, the splitter slider's been looking good. He's been using that split finger pitch. He's a guy who doesn't really give up a whole lot of hard contact. The swinging and misses are up. Whiffs are chilling down. Overall, Stroman is a guy that I really hope the Mets could bring back to help solidify this Mets rotation. Is he a number 2 starter on this team? I don't know about that just yet. We're going to have to see if everyone's healthy and what this rotation looks like. Marcus Stroman is going to be re-signed, in my opinion. Hopefully, we know he's a little into the money, but hopefully Uncle Stevie, he makes all the moves. He'll make the right one.
So then I go to you, Andrew. Is Marcus Stroman a guy that is worth giving a lot of money to, even if it could perhaps cost you a Carlos Correa? Is he worth going into a bidding war in order to retain him because the position he plays? You say like, oh, would you have Correa or Stroman? Would you have Baez or Stroman, Conforto, whoever? But it's like the importance of starting pitching and all the struggles the Mets had in the rotation. Stroman was the only reliable starting pitcher the Mets had the entire season. So, I mean, and we talk about being able to perform in New York. Stroman proved that he could do that. So what do you feel about him? How do you feel about him?
I mean, yeah, I would love to bring him back, but honestly, he's going to go sign with the Yankees. He's going to go to the New York team he wanted to go to. He's going to go pitch in the wild card game, win the wild card game, and he's going to help the Yankees win the World Series next year. I mean, it's just obviously the Yankees are going to have to pay somebody. Obviously, I want the Mets to bring him back. Do I want to get into a bidding war? The arms out there, there isn't a lot of great, late 20s, early 30s kind of arms. It's him, Kevin Gausman, Anthony DeStefani. Those are like kind of the only guys you think of in that like 29 to 30 range that are going to be free agents this year. Obviously, you have the older cores, the Scherzers, the Kershaws, the Verlanders, those guys, and then the Klubers and guys like that. So Stroman is going to be one of the most – we've already seen the Cubs, Padres, Obviously the Yankees are going to be involved because they need pitching. I mean, again, that's a team always involved in pitching. Hell, the Dodgers could use them. If they can get the Bauer money off and Scherzer leaves, the Dodgers can get involved. So I don't think there should be a price. I'm not going, and this isn't a Max Scherzer. This isn't that guy, but he is a good arm that I would like to see back. But I'm not giving up, $200 million for this guy. No, but if there's a price that we all can agree on, then I wouldn't mind it. But I think the people are going to overpay him very much, and I don't want another kind of Jordan Zimmerman contract if he doesn't have another year like this year.
Yeah, another guy could bring up Patrick Corbin. He's another guy who got a huge payday after, not the greatest of numbers. So, Mets fan, you've been a guy that was on Marcus Stroman bandwagon since day one. So, do you think the Mets will bring him back? And would you get into a bidding war for him? I mean, do the numbers, do the metrics and stuff like that tell you that he is someone that is so worth keeping that you can get into a bidding war in order to do that? Even if you have to lose your boy Conforto to do it.
There's so many ways you can look at this. Stroman's from New York, the uncertainty of DeGrom, Syndergaard, and the rest of the rotation. Taijuan Walker pretty much died for the second half. Carlos Carrasco, we don't know what's going on with him in the first inning. Obviously, I just think he needs a spring training. But can he do it in New York? I think he can. I think he did. I'd love to bring him back, but you never know. I'll tell you, if Stroman is going to stay in New York just to blast Mets beat reporters all day, give him the $200 million, okay? I don't care. I'm so sick of DeComo, Martino, Puma, and their addictions for clicks with this team. I'm so sick of it. Maybe Stroman can take him down a peg, and maybe the Mets won't look like shit, maybe just for one day in the media's eyes. Anyway, Stroman, he's been the Iron Man this year. He stepped up when nobody else could. He's been pretty much the only guy healthy. Did he get 34 starts or no? He just did 33. Right?
I think he just barely missed it because I think he got scratched earlier than one start, and he had starts that were canceled and doubleheader starts. I mean, his season was all over the place,
which is a godsend when you look at the amount of pitching injuries we've had this year. Injuries in general, but pitching injuries, we've had 19 different starting pitchers. So the fact that he's been that Iron Man there. I mean, who knows? That he has interest to the Mets, obviously. He has interest to other teams. We'll see what happens. I'd love to have him back. Obviously, there's going to be a price. He is 30 years old, but the type of pitcher that he is definitely set up for a longevity type of career. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what he asks for. I know he'll probably have a little bit more confidence in himself, taking the qualifying offer and, being top 10 in ERA, great ERA. So, there you go. I mean, we'll see what happens. Again, add it to the list. Add another question mark to the list. We just don't know. You go down this entire topics that we have, question mark, question mark, question mark. We just don't know. And it's all going to happen really quick before December 1st. For the CBA that was invented by Andrew Acevedo. So we'll see.
Yeah, and you know what? It's so important to have starting pitching because I always go back to why the Mets get to World Series in 2015. It was because of pitching. Now, the one thing that will be at Stroman's disadvantage is that Max Scherzer will be in that free agent market. Robbie Ray will be in that free agent market. And if Robbie Ray does indeed win the AL Cy Young, that could, sway some teams a little bit. And they say, maybe we should go after Robbie Ray instead of Marcus Stroman. And who knows? Maybe the social media is kind of a thing where some teams are like, oh, you know what? We don't really want a guy that has, such a presence on social media negatively, is blocking people and arguing with reporters and things like that. Maybe some teams don't want that. They want to stay under the radar, have good PR. So that's something to consider as well. But I think that, like we said, when you look at the other options that are out there for a starting pitcher, I actually do prefer Marcus Stroman over some of these other options, even if Robbie Ray does win the Cy Young, because I think a lot of people forget right before Ray won the Cy Young, he was not that good of a pitcher. I mean, this was a guy that walked the ballpark, whether it was in Arizona, then he came to Toronto the next year, last year in 2020, wasn't that good. All of a sudden, he has a Cy Young year, and mostly because of what he did in the second half. LB The Show, he was player of the month in August. So he did a lot of his damage in 1 month. So I wouldn't be in such a rush. Like, this isn't a guy that's a perennial Cy Young Award winner. And then I think the same goes for Kevin Guzman, who he made the All-Star team this year for the Giants, but he's not a guy who's a perennial All-Star. So I don't think that should necessarily be my top priority when Marcus Stroman actually has more of the proven track record than those guys. And again, that whole advantage of you did it in Mets uniform should count for something. And when you look at how much this team has struggled with injuries, if you have a guy that could be out there every 5 days, that is extremely important. So I would be willing to get into a little bit of a bidding war for Marcus Stroman, but every player does have their price. So I'm not going to go Garrett Cole status to keep Marcus Stroman, but I would really like to keep him. I do look at it as a very high priority, but obviously everybody does have their price. So since Alyssa asked about, the offseason, I guess I'll just skip questions and just go straight to the offseason, especially when we look at the time right now. So what should the Mets' main focus in free agency be? Tony Metro, what would be your main focus?
Shit. Everything? I don't know. Are you kidding me? Like, we have so many holes on this team. I don't even know where to begin. Starting pitching probably should be it. So focusing on getting Noah Syndergaard locked down with the qualifying offer. Marcus Stroman, if we could find that, that middle ground on a contract. And then otherwise pivoting and going out and trying to find a legit number 3 starter. Carrasco doesn't give me any inspiration. Rich Hill was fine, but I don't want him back for anything more than a 6th or 7th starting pitcher, some depth. And then we got to figure out how to address this lineup. It was so bad this year. What is it that they're missing? How do we fix it? And positionally, where does that fit in with the rest of the offseason? So there's a ton of stuff to unravel, and I really can't give you a firm answer. Oh, yeah, and a good closer. Nice call, Brian.
Yeah, so and that's true. Like, there really are so many question marks. So if you could only focus on one question mark, all right, I guess Hayden is gone. No, Hayden is gone.
Here.
All right, so Hayden, what would be your main focus in free agency?
Well, listen, you could never really have enough starting pitching. Personally, one guy that I've been kind of infatuated with, who has been honestly one of the most underrated relievers, is Raisel Iglesias. He is coming off his final season with the Anaheim Angels. And Mets fan or the other analytical people, if you want to go on his savant, it's probably really good. Regardless, he gets barreled quite a bit, but regardless of that, he's probably in the 90th percentile for spin rate, chase rate, walks, slugging, xFOBA, hard hit rate, whatever else they have on that website. He has been really elite. His fastball is there. The command of the plate is there. The slider has been really on top of it. Raisel Iglesias, he's played for the Angels. He doesn't get a whole lot of opportunities, obviously, to close games. I don't know necessarily if he'll be a closer in New York. If he were to come, he could potentially be, a nice 7th, 8th inning guy, depending on what the Mets do with other guys like Lugo. So we'll see with that. Starting pitching, you can never have enough. We saw really a lot of our bullpen get very fatigued later on in the second half, which is kind of responsible for some Mets losses. So like I said, you can never have enough pitching, starting, and bullpen. Third base is an issue I would like to be addressed, and outfield. In terms of the outfield, the only natural outfielders we have staying next season fully is Nimmo, and I guess if you want to say Khalil Lee. Conforto's questionable. McNeil, not a natural outfielder. Smith, not a natural outfielder. And both of those guys are kind of questionable. So you really just have Nimmo, and can Khalil Lee offensively perform in the major leagues? We know he wasn't really doing much contact when he was in the major leagues, more of a minor league contact guy. Killed it, but can he do it in the major leagues? Honestly, you really got to say everything. Outfield is something because we don't really have much of it in the farm system. What we have, Cortez, Khalil Lee, and your 30th pick, you don't really have much. So outfield is something I would like addressed. Third base, clearly, especially for the offensive production, and pitching.
Yeah, I think the only issue with Raisel Iglesias is the Mets might find themselves like last year where he might be looking for the closer role. And if that's the case, the closer role is not for sale. So, and if Raisel Iglesias wants to get saves, other teams could offer him that, like the Los Angeles Angels where he was. So,
you know what? The Mets, I think we talked about it on the stream once, is that should the closer role be a thing? And I think all of us said no. It should just be, whatever the manager feels. And maybe the Mets look into that. That's always – listen, I understand the point of view. The manager likes to have a person who they know that they can go into in the 9th inning who's safe, but that could be an option to explore.
the main reason I talk about that is like with the closer role is the Yankees. Who remembers when they brought in all of those closers? I mean, what was it? Britton and Ottavino, Chapman, of course. Who was the other?
At one point, they had Andrew Miller, but I don't think they had
Andrew Miller.
Miller
they had all these
together?
Closers. Yeah, they had all these closers, and I don't know. Maybe it's just the Yankees are so appealing, and the Yankees can just get their way. I don't know, possibly, but like it's possible, and I don't know. Maybe Cohen can make this team appealing. I mean, is that the goal? I don't know, but like the closer role needs to die, and that's about it. And
I mean, the thing is that guys do get paid for, being a closer, getting saves, things like that. I think a lot of it is going to depend on Edwin Diaz. I mean, Diaz has to be okay with giving that closer role to somebody else. Is Iglesias the guy I would do it for? I don't know. I feel like there were better relievers last offseason that would have been more willing to do it with. So it is something to consider. So Andrew,
I think Diaz just wants the reps. I think Diaz just wants the reps. Like I don't think he's just like, yeah, I'm the closer. I'm the king of New York. I'm here, because if you didn't know, he's not really liked by many people. So it's like, it's not like he's, I think he's earned the closer role, but like, should he be the one calling the shots when you're the most inconsistent, like when your position is the most inconsistent in baseball, such as relievers? Like, I don't know, like the closer role just kill it already.
Yeah, we don't know what's said behind closed doors. We have no idea what Edwin Diaz says when the Mets say, like, listen, if we brought in Liam Hendricks or Mark Melancon or whoever, take your pick, and Edwin Diaz is like, oh, absolutely not. I have to be the closer. Like, we have no idea. We really don't. Yeah. So, Andrew, what would your main focus be in free agency?
So I'm going to combine the question we skipped down and this question together, because it kind of does. It's two parts of this question. The first thing, when we're allowed to extend and sign players, the first thing we need to extend the captain, the best player on this team, the smartest player on this team, Brandon Nimmo. That's the first thing to do. That's he is the smartest individual on this team. He's the best player. He's the best looking. That's the first thing to do. Then you focus on, obviously, like I mentioned earlier. Okay. Obviously, pitching, and everybody's saying it, deepening the minor league core. Like I said, if you have some excess good, yes, depth's great. But if you guys are out of options, like some of these guys are because they have service time in the big leagues, they can veto not going to the minor leagues. You trade the excess fat for more minor league depth. And the biggest issue with this team last year is some clutch ball players. We need some guys who can hit when there's a guy on second base or a guy on third base and bring him in. I know RBIs aren't everybody's favorite thing. They like the weighted runs instead of actual runs. Like me, I love me some weighted runs. I love not scoring runs on the scoreboard, but I love them on a stat sheet. He looks good. He weighted runs. But obviously we need some guys. I would have loved and had a CJ Crone, but he just got extended from Denver. They gave him a nice little extension. But again, maybe some more platoon options. I know everybody's like, we'll just go out and sign, a third baseman. Maybe you play at Tampa Bay where they have a Brasso and I think it's Yandy Diaz who plays at third.
Wendell's playing some third too, also. I mean, they'll have a lot of guys that play third, and that's just what Tampa does. They'll just move people around all over the place.
But I'm saying, like, let's say in left field, obviously there are names out there. There's not amazing names out there, but maybe you find a guy strictly, he kills lefties, you play against lefties, you find a guy that kills against righties. Adam Duvall and Jock Peterson, there's a couple guys. Obviously I'll go more in depth in my video about what I would do and what some players you should look at, but maybe more platooning. Obviously depth's the most important word in sports now, especially when the Mets – how many players the Mets used this year, Mets fan?
64.
64. I mean, you have a 40-man roster, so now you're going over. You're almost going – 2 rosters now. You almost had a full 25-man, a second roster that you need. And obviously, you hope, usually you don't have to go 64 players deep, but, a good 30, 35, going into the season. And obviously, waiver claims and all that's going to be different. But again, I think I'm going to steal something that Mets fan has said a lot, but I would love to see a full rotation in the minor leagues in AAA of guys who have some options. Either it's young talent, maybe it's the former prospects that flop, maybe a Mike Hoffman, that's the winger for the Winnipeg Jets. Jeff Hoffman, kind of like, guys who were top prospects, but maybe a change of scenery.
Another Joey Lucchesi, pretty much.
Another Joey, exactly. Guys like that, Joey Lucchesi, maybe a Jordan Yamamoto, top prospects that for their team now, maybe flopping. Mackenzie Gore, maybe, just saying. just threw a name out there who potentially the Padres, in there blowing it up, and he has flopped lately.
Padres destroyed their farm already.
No, they still have a pretty solid farm, but it's not
this season for what? Snell and
they didn't touch any of their good prospects. Yeah, they touched like their second tier. They didn't touch anybody in their good tier. But besides the point, deep in the farm system,
and Patino were pretty good.
They were pretty good, but they were like the second best at even at position. They were the second best guys. Besides the point,
of that Padres rotation got outpitched by Michael Wacha. So
that is very true. So again, as I said, it's the same points deep in the farm system. Sign Michael Conforto, sign Brandon Nimmo, and get some guys who can run in scoring position.
Okay, and Mets fan, what should the Mets' main focus in free agency be?
I mean, I would say third base because I would love to have the Puerto Rican infield, but I mean, to troll a little bit, I guess, because I've been very, very serious this entire stream. Catcher, why not?
You just make Tomas Neal give Tomas Neal 20 years.
Austin Hedges, man, come on.
Okay, so we will skip another question. We'll just go straight to the last question. So we know that the Mets do need a president of baseball operations and they do need a manager. So this question is for fun. The only guy that is excluded that is not a choice is Theo Epstein. So other than that, you have the ability to pick whoever you want. So Steve Cohen comes to you and says, all right, I need you to pick me a president of baseball operations, a manager. You could have anybody. Who would it be? Mets Talk with Hayden. Let's get it started.
Put me on the spot. Manager. Managers, there's a lot of guys out there. Ron Washington. Carlos Beltran. I know it's probably been on everyone's list, but I'm probably just going to go basic Carlos Beltran. President of baseball operations. As Wayne Randazzo would say, Francisco Alvarez for David Stearns. Now, realistically, though, no, they're not getting rid of Alvarez. Someone, a guy like David Stearns would be great.
Okay, so Stearns and Beltran. That's an interesting combo. Okay.
Not trading Alvarez away, of course.
But not trading away Alvarez, of course. Yeah, that would just be insane. Okay, so, Andrew, what would be your combination?
Well, obviously, there's two parts to this one. Obviously, take it serious. Josh Burns is my guy. That's my president of baseball ops. And then Carlos Beltran, because I need some autographs of my guy. I don't care if he sucks. I just need autographs. That's just a personal pick. So you give me Beltran, the manager, and then we'll have a good bench coach. So if he sucks, we'll have an actual either manager in development or not Dave J, no, but a guy on the bench spot. And if he sucks, you get out of here and you actually have a manager ready to go. But personal reasons, of course. I know Frank, I don't know why you're not agreeing. I'm surprised at who you say, but got to get Carlos back on the job.
All right, and Mets fan, are you going to give us the trifecta of Beltran and some other president, or what would be your combo?
Okay, I'm going to go Burns, and if we can go Michael Hill. We can have both of them. Be nice. But I'll go again. I'll troll again, but. The manager, I'll take Wally Backman. I need Wally Backman to fire him up. We got to bring back 86, all right? And then Ron Washington for the cocaine. So you'll have him on the bench coach, and then that'll be it. But no, all seriousness, Bob Melvin is a lot more unlikely as the time goes by. It's so hard. I would try to look at like young developing teams or teams that are very good, like I'd say analytically. So try and look like some bench coaches from maybe the Rays, bench coaches maybe from Milwaukee, bench coaches from there you go. Bench coaches from San Francisco, maybe some hitting, maybe try to look at some hitting coaches to be the manager, because hitting was a really big problem this year for this fucking team.
Mike Piazza hit more games.
Mike Piazza, I doubt that's gonna happen. But yeah, if you want to bring back 86, if you want to actually win a championship, you get Ron Washington to supply the cocaine, and you get Wally Backman to fire everybody up. And that's about it.
All right. And if I had my way, if I can't have Bob Melvin as the manager, my guy would be Miguel Cairo. I don't know why. For some reason, I just really like it. I look at what Alex Cora the effect he's had on Boston. And I think that the closest thing you can get to Alex Cora is probably Miguel Cairo, because he literally played the same timeline as Cora, played the same positions, played for a bunch of teams. He's currently a bench coach with the White Sox, which Cora was a bench coach with the Astros. So he was a former Met and a former Yankee. So he has a little bit of experience with New York as well. And I think Miguel Cairo is in a good age range where he understands the new school philosophies, but he still kind of understands the old school philosophies. And he is bilingual, so he could connect well with English-speaking players. And we have a lot of Spanish-speaking players on this team as well. So he'd be able to relate with those guys really well. And I think that when we look at just some of the other managers, like Beltran, he just has no coaching experience at all. Like, at least Miguel Cairo has that bench coach experience. And one other thing I want to say about Carlos Beltran, which nobody has brought up, but I'm going to use a basketball example for this. Very rarely do you see a guy who's a Hall of Fame caliber player become a good coach. A lot of times, good coaches are players that weren't that good. And Miguel Cairo was a good utility player, but he never made an all-star team. He's never going to be in the Hall of Fame. But sometimes you can't always have the mindset of a star. You need to have the mindset of the everyday utility guy who did a lot of different things. This way you can connect with multiple guys on your team, because when you have the talent, it's easy to say, oh, I'm just going to go hit the ball. I'm just going to go make the shot. But when you have a guy that's struggling, you need to be willing to make adjustments to fit in with the team. And when Miguel Cairo played on so many different teams, he had to make a lot of adjustments in order to do that. So I think he'd be able to preach that to the organization. And then for my president of baseball operations, I will literally take anybody from Tampa Bay Rays, like literally anybody. At this point, I'll take the janitor. I don't care. It has to be somebody from Tampa Bay, because they went to the World Series last year and then lost Charlie Morton, traded away Blake Snell, and lost Tyler Glasnow, and still won 100 games with one of the lowest payrolls in all of baseball, and could go to the World Series yet again as they lead the Red Sox in Game 1. So whatever it is they're doing on a daily basis, on a day-to-day basis, how they approach things, I need to know word by word what they're doing so that I could copy it. I have to, because it has been so successful. And I'm going to have the money to spend that Tampa Bay does not. So I have no excuse why I should not be a very successful baseball team. But that will do it for us. We ran pretty late. We had a lot of good conversations. So in case there's anyone new joining, and everyone who was here the whole time, thank you for watching, whether it's now or before or in the future afterwards. If you're watching this now, leave a like. So let's go back around the horn in case anyone is new watching, so we could introduce ourselves and talk about anything that's going on. So first up, Mets Talk or Rays Talk with Hayden.
What's going on, everyone? Mets Talk or Rays Talk with Hayden is the name. Raging is the game. I hope we're all doing extremely well. I want to thank Frank for hosting, and of course, you guys tuning in. You guys can check me out on YouTube, obviously, Mets Talk with Hayden, live streams, videos on series recaps, summaries, news, predictions, updates, all that great stuff. Follow me on Twitter at Mets Hayden. I recently just did another interview, my second interview with Reckless Airwaves Radio, going over the Mets offseason, what went wrong, and the playoffs. So check that out. James McCann is a legend. Yes, LFGM. Let's go Mets.
And the Rhino, a.k.a. All Elite Rhino, a.k.a. Andrew Acevedo. So what is going on in Rhino land?
Yeah, today was a little more trolling with the answers, having a little more fun with the not obviously more of the armchair GM guy. A lot of you guys watch, more of you guys go to me to the armchair stuff. I will try to get out next week, or maybe I'll wait until after, maybe around the NL, the CSs, to get out my dream off season and what I would do as the, I guess, new future president of baseball ops, future content. Again, I'm in a new location for a little while. Don't know how much longer I'll be able to do these for a little while, but obviously, it's always a pleasure to hang out and talk about the team that we, for some reason, continuously go back to, and James McCann is elite.
All right, and Mets fan, the number one James McCann supporter. In case it's you guys' first time watching, Mets fan, he really, really likes James McCann. He probably won't say it, but deep down, he knows that James McCann's a pretty solid player.
Yeah, I love my Arkansas boys. Anyway,
I think he's even from Arkansas. He's from like Tennessee or something.
Aren't they from? Isn't he from the college Arkansas?
He may be, but I think he grew up in Tennessee.
Yeah, right?
He ain't worth a Google check.
He ain't worth the Google check. Just you'll vomit. Mets fan, analytics, numbers, all that stuff. Got some fun stuff for my channel. We also have some fun stuff for Mets Weekly coming out pretty soon. Some stuff for the future. And yeah, Little tease on that. And yeah, that's about it. Let's go Mets. This offseason is going to be fun, stressful, entertaining, pretty much every adjective possible. And we're here for it because changes need to be made. So yeah, let's go Mets.
Yep, and I'm Frank about sports. It's going to be a crazy offseason. A lot of stuff is going to be happening, so there will be a lot of videos for all that different stuff happening. I mean, that is the best time to make content, and it will be around this channel as well as everybody else's channel. So thank you for watching, everyone. Be safe, and let's go Mets.